Okay, our regularly scheduled council meeting of January 18th is now in session. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes, sir. Mayor Clark?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brinkman? Here. Councilmember Cernanik?
Here.
Councilmember Cole? Here. Councilmember Stallman?
Here.
Councilmember Taylor?
Present.
Councilmember Trujillo?
Here. Would you all rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, I'd like to suggest that we switch 6B with 6A. Just reverse the order of those. We have some younger attendants here that, as you can hear, are rather time sensitive. So, are there any other changes to the agenda? Then the agenda is approved with that modification. Minutes for the special meeting of December 14th.
I have
Changes? Updates?
one correction in 4 lines. Line 19, 20, 24, and 25, Hebert should be H-E-R-B-E-R-T.
Okay. Anything else? Then those minutes are approved with that change. Minutes from the meeting of January 4th.
One quick correction on line 187, page 7. Kevin's last name is S-H-A-N-D, not T.
Okay, any other changes for those?
And on page 2, line 36, it's build with a T, built, and no D, important trail.
Okay. Anything else? Then those minutes are approved with those changes. Changes to January 11th.
On page 2, and we're not numbered there, but 2 paragraphs up from item C, I went to insert words, and I'll tell you where the insert is. Councilmember Stallman presented the possibility of an environmental educational solar garden, insert which would make money for investors in the garden, concept for that address.
Any objections? All righty.
I have a question. That's not necessarily inaccurate, but there was more to it than that. So
It's what?
I said what you're suggesting isn't inaccurate, but there was more to it than that in terms of cutting the city's utility bills and so forth and so on.
Yeah, I don't object if you want to put more, but part of the investment piece was part of the of that.
You want to hold these back and approve them next week?
No, I don't think we need to. I think I'll go with her changes. That's fine.
Okay. Anything else? Then those minutes are approved with that change. Any new city employees?
No, sir, not tonight.
Okay. Then our first switched item is a recognition of Judge Chris's years of service. And I'm going to ask Judge Anderson to come down and make the presentation, please.
There he is. Come on down. What I had to do as Chief Judge was to accept Judge Chris's decision to retire at the end of 2010. Not that he didn't deserve to do so, but because it was a loss for the city in terms of the service that Judge Chris has extended over the city for a long period of time. To give you an idea of how long and how much change there Judge Chris started as judge in January 1982. You could get a stamp for 20 cents. Gallon of gas cost $1.30. Population of Littleton was about 28,000. And a quarterback at the University of Stanford finished his college career so strongly that he was selected as the #1 draft choice the following year in the NFL draft. That was John Elway. Now here at the end of 2010 and 2011, the stamp cost 44 cents. A gallon of gas that was pulling in was about $3 a gallon. The population of Littleton is now about 42,000, significant, almost 50% increase. And I might add John Elway's return to the Broncos. Anyway, I've asked several people about Judge Chris, putting together some words about him. Some of you may know that Judge Chris graduated from the University of Kansas, that he had a degree in electrical engineering. Some of you may know that he served as a project manager at what's now Lockheed Martin on the Fighting Mars land. Some of you may know that he graduated from the University of Denver Law School, and that he came on. All right, thank you. And that he came on and served in the capacity of municipal judge for the city of Littleton in 1982. What you may not know is that in addition to all of that, that he also was a commercial pilot, has his commercial pilot's license, and was a fighter pilot in the United States Air Force and an instructor. So the first presentation I have for him as our legal Top Gun is to give the Top Gun cap. In addition, the city recognized him with this plaque for his years of service, and I'll read it. It says, "Gerald Chris, you have climbed the mountain, now enjoy the view. Thank you for your dedicated service from the city of Littleton, 1982 to 2010. I'd like to present that to Judge Chris with our thanks, my personal thanks, as a mentor and as a friend. Congratulations.
I don't make speeches or remarks, but I would like to thank the city. It's been my pleasure all these years. It's been a wonderful opportunity and a marvelous experience for me throughout the time I've been here. We're not going anywhere. We'll still be around the city, and I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, and I realize that you have younger members of the family that have a schedule that's different than ours. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, next we have Chris Bollendonk. I hope I said that right. Chip. I was concentrating on the last name. Which is our house and wearing student ambassador for the Bega Littleton Sister City Exchange.
All right, once more. Pardon me.
Be sure to wave to Mom.
Hi, Mom. Watching at home and recording it right now. Are you ready? I'd like to take you on a trip to my hometown, Littleton, Colorado. Littleton is what I'd like to say the perfect town, set in, quite frankly, the perfect place. It's along the South Platte River, one of the 4 major rivers in the state of Colorado. It's south of the metropolis Denver, the largest city in the state, and it's set right at the base of the beautiful and historic Rocky Mountains. Now, the beginning of my hometown. Starting in 1859, hundreds of people came to Colorado in search of gold and silver in the mountains, populating many parts of the state. One of these places was Denver, which would become the largest city in the state. One of the men populating Denver was Richard Little. He was an engineer tasked with designing irrigation ditches to service the growing metropolis. While surveying south of Denver, he fell in love with an area of land and brought his wife, Angeline, out to farm. This man, Richard Little, would become the first resident of Littleton, Colorado. With help from his neighbors, Richard Little built the Rough and Ready Mill along an abandoned irrigation ditch connecting to the South Platte River. This river, and then in turn the mill, would allow Littleton, the city, to thrive both agriculturally and economically. 5 years after the construction of the mill, Littleton subdivided his property and the village of Littleton was created. Now, Littleton was becoming an official hometown to many people. The population was, of course, increasing drastically from about 2 people, Littleton and his wife, in 1862 to over 240 residents in 1890. In this year, 1890, the town of Littleton was officially incorporated, and my hometown was born. In 1902, Littleton encountered a very special moment in its history. The city was made a county seat, the county of Arapahoe County. This position brought government employees to the city, and with those employees, the various services and businesses that support the county. Littleton was now growing larger and faster than ever, and its place was secured among Colorado's cities. Littleton would prosper first in agriculture. Many farms emerged, processing wheat, corn, oats, rye, and barley. The nearby Rough and Ready Mill, first built by Richard Little, would process this flour and ship it to nearby cities across the state and even across the nation. The Highline Canal, completed in 1882, allowed farmers to farm farther from the river, the South Platte, allowing Littleton to grow in size. Agriculture, for these reasons, would remain the staple industry of Littleton for nearly half a century. Just a little bit of history, the past 150 years in a nutshell. By the turn of the century, the population had reached over 700. Littleton residents would get electricity just a few years later. The population jumped to over 1,000 by 1910. America, of course, entered World War I in 1917, which is the same year that the Carnegie Library was built, as seen above. In 1920 was a special year, especially for me, because the first Littleton High School was erected. Called the Grant Street High School, it's the first picture seen above. Students used this building until the current Littleton High School, where I attend, was built in 1956. Today, this building is the District Education Services Center. The Town Hall, the middle picture, was also constructed in the year of 1920 and still stands on Main Street today. City offices and chambers were located on the first floor, in addition to the town fire truck. An interesting fact, the floor of where the fire truck was kept was actually slanted so the firemen could wash off the truck inside and the water would run out into the street. This feature can still be seen today. Also in the building was an assembly hall, police department, and city jail. By 1950, the population had reached over 3,000. In this year, interestingly enough, the city had its own racetrack called the Centennial Racetrack. Unfortunately, the track only lasted 33 years, and a lack of interest by Littleton residents, it closed a little while later. I live about a mile from where the track used to be, and an elementary school serving grades kindergarten through 5th grade stands nearby and bears the racetrack's name. In 1959, the Rough and Ready Mill, which did so much for Littleton, the city, built by Little, was destroyed by fire for the third and last time. A year later, the population had reached 13,670. Now, with a larger population and more people in the town, various services had to be updated. One of these was the library. the Bemis Public Library opened to replace the Carnegie Library, seen previously, in 1965. The Bemis Library still stands today, and I go do homework at it with friends all the time. It is the first picture seen above. A few years later, in 1970, the population had reached over 25,000, and the Historical Museum opened. This museum is important because it preserves Littleton history, and residents today can go and somewhat experience what life was like in Littleton as early as when Richard Little himself had visited the area. Moving on, in 1972, the Chatfield Dam was created southwest of downtown Littleton to collect water. It was built to combat severe floods that had been experienced a few years prior. A couple years later, the Arapahoe Community College moved into its permanent place in Littleton, attracting students to the city as well. By 1980, the population had reached 28,600. 10 years later, by Littleton's centennial, the population had reached over 30,000. Now I can talk about the history that I know best, my life. In 1994, Littleton became my official hometown. I was born and began to live in Littleton, Colorado. I've lived in the same house since I was a month old, west of downtown Littleton. Since being born, I've enjoyed the Littleton parades, events, library, parks, and much more, everything the city has had to offer. Now I'm 16 years old and live within the limits of Littleton High School. I live in a neighborhood called Beaumar South, having about 200 houses. An important part of my hometown, of course, is my family. I have two very supportive parents and a younger sister. We do many activities together in Littleton year-round, from sledding in the winter to going to concerts in the summer, to enjoying the neighborhood pool, to just biking and running through the area. In my neighborhood, we have 2 lakes, a swimming pool, tennis courts, and a playground. You can see it's a fabulous place to grow up as a child, and I plan on bringing my kids someplace similar to raise them as well. I think I speak for everyone in the town of Littleton when I say we have an excellent education system, with 13 elementary schools serving grades kindergarten through 5th, 4 middle schools serving grades 6th through 8th grade, and 3 high schools for 9th through 12th grade. We have over 15,000 students in Littleton Public Schools. I've attended Littleton Public Schools for the past 11 years and am now a junior at Littleton High School. I love my school, Littleton High School, because it is like a hometown within a hometown. I feel very comfortable, welcome, and content with everyone I meet every day, whether it's staff or students. We are the Littleton Lions. Our colors are purple and gold. This school has about 1,500 students who represent almost every walk of life. The range in demographics gives my school a worldly feel and make it seem exactly like a hometown within a hometown. And just as with an actual town, there's tons to do at Littleton High, with clubs ranging from ping pong to technology to student council to mythical creatures club. Anything is possible at my school. We're also proud of our many sports like football, soccer, track, cross country, swimming, and more. Personally, I'm very active at school. I participate in student council as student body vice president. I love leadership as well, and represent my peers through this club. Representing them is quite an honor. In addition, I'm involved in the Technology Student Association and have been for many years. This year, I'm serving the country as national reporter. For sports, I run track and cross country, and recently I've begun performing arts and am in the school musical. Needless to say, I stay very busy in my school, my hometown. In addition, Littleton has tons of recreational opportunities. At the base of the Rocky Mountains, the city is an excellent place to spend time outside. Littleton's many paths, greenways, and trails give residents places to run, walk, bike, skate, do anything they'd like outside, as seen here in these pictures. In addition, the South Platte River and many area lakes and swimming pools offer water recreation opportunities, especially in the summer. Many people enjoy tubing in the river and swimming in the pools, and then they can ice skate in the winter and snowshoe. Recreation, of course, is not limited to the city, as the mountains are extremely close by. Many residents will drive up almost every weekend to go skiing or snowboarding, if not to just enjoy the mountains so close. Ski resorts are within an hour to 2 hours drive. The city of Denver is also very a short drive away, and recreational opportunities such as shopping or visiting museums are always available for residents. Now, a very special part of my hometown are the traditions that we have. What comes first to mind when I speak of traditions is the holiday season. Since I was very young, I can remember seeing Littleton around Christmas time and experiencing those holiday traditions. The day after Thanksgiving, which is the fourth Thursday in November, a parade is held. And during this, Santa comes down Main Street, and as he does, thousands of lights down Main Street are lit up, lighting up the boulevard, and will remain lit throughout the holiday season. These lights glisten off the snow, of course, because Colorado in the northern hemisphere celebrates Christmas during the winter months. You can see some pictures of the beautiful lights that stay illuminated throughout the season in Littleton. Another vital part of Littleton culture is Western Welcome Week. In the 11 days of festivities, there are concerts, parades, shows, workshops, and activities for residents to enjoy. This is held during August as summer comes to a close in Littleton, and the activities honor and showcase my town's heritage. Most of the proceeds of all the activities go towards local organizations and businesses. Many residents might say that the most memorable part of this week, Western Welcome Week, is the parade, with fire trucks, policemen, marching bands, floats, and businesses walking down Main Street. There are always new things to see and enjoy. When Australians from Bega visit Littleton every 5 years, they walk in the parade as well, and they ride on their own float. Another important part of Littleton, my hometown, are all the unique landmarks. Littleton's history is preserved through these landmarks and in various areas throughout the city. The Littleton Historical Museum, which opened in 1970, is open year-round and showcases some of these wonderful landmarks. Here are just a few icons of the city that I would like to share. First is Main Street. It is, of course, the main street of downtown Littleton and contains many historic landmarks in itself. This is one of the original streets of the town and remains a vital part of our lives as Littleton residents. I myself drive down it 2 times a day going to and from school. At the end of Main Street sits the Carnegie Library. It was the original Littleton Library and became a police station and jail in 1965. After 1977, it became a disco, and after that, several different restaurants. Today, it's a famous fondue restaurant called the Melting Pot. You can see in the picture that that the Carnegie Library really hasn't changed much since it was originally constructed. The Arapahoe County Courthouse is a Littleton historical landmark for a very good reason. It has an extremely commanding presence overlooking Main Street, and it has a very clear view overlooking the entire area. Completed in 1908, this building was the county courthouse and remains today the Littleton Municipal Courthouse. Littleton had 2 creameries for a while. One of them still stands and was built in 1884. It was in operation until 1902 and is currently an antique store. An interesting fact was, for one school year, 1904 to 1905, this creamery was the site of Littleton High School. It's a very small one-room building. The Denver and Rio Grande Depot is an important landmark that still stands today. This railroad was the first to reach Littleton in 1871, and the depot was constructed in 75. Although the railroad doesn't serve our city as much as it used to, the depot still stands on the railroad tracks today. Currently at these tracks is the Denver Metro Light Rail Transportation System, which Littleton residents can take to the metropolis of Denver. The old depot is now a coffee shop at this station. Another railroad depot still remains in Littleton. This was the depot for the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railroad. It was constructed in 1888, and the depot closed in 1967. Today, the depot is an art center and showcases local pieces. When I went to go take pictures, it actually had pieces from my very own high school done by some of my own art friends. The Buck Recreation Center is not necessarily a historical landmark, but I'm sure in many years it will come to that place. The Douglas H. Buck Rec Center is named for a man who greatly contributed to the town's youth. It contains a small library, swimming pool, weight training sets, gymnasiums, computer labs, lounge, and community rooms, in addition to many classes for children, adults, and seniors. Now, Bega Park. It's set at the very heart of downtown Littleton, and it's a small open place dedicated to Littleton's sister city, Bega, Australia. This park has benches and statues and trees to enjoy in the center of a bustling town. This brings me to the sister city program itself. 50 years ago, two men from opposite sides of the globe made an unlikely yet seemingly perfect connection. One was Houston Waring, editor of the Littleton Independent, our town newspaper, and who also starred in the film Small Town Editor. W.B. Curley Annabelle was editor of the Bega District News in Bega, Australia, and he saw a connection between the Littleton in the film he saw and the city he lived in. When President Eisenhower of the United States encouraged the formation of international relationships in the late 1950s, Bega, Australia, and Littleton, United States, became the first of American-Australian sister cities. Friendship between Waring and Annabelle brought these two cities very close together. They're similar in size in 1961. Now today, Littleton has grown much larger, but Houston Waring's legacy lives on. Although Littleton has grown, they're still exemplary sister cities. Every 5 years, a delegation, or every 2.5 years, a delegation from either Littleton or Bega visits the other city, alternating each time. Houston Waring's legacy lives on through the House Waring Student Ambassador Program, which gives Littleton students a chance to travel to their sister city with their delegation free of charge. This allows the student to work individually to present about Littleton, their hometown, in order to win the competition to travel. While visiting the sister city, the chosen student will answer questions about their home and educate the residents of Bega about their sister city, while experiencing another town halfway across the world. Waring's vision of a friendship between two similar cities lives on today through this program. Now today, we are still sister cities in more than name. Littleton and Bega are very similar. Both are friendly towns with many nice people, lots to do, and beautiful things to see. Although it's been 50 years since the partnership began, the continuing friendship truly exemplifies the good nature and friendly attitudes of both cities. So would you and Bega like to know what's happening in my hometown? At any time, you can check out what's happening via the cupola cam atop the Littleton County Courthouse, which you saw earlier. It's accessible online off of www.littletongov.org. Look for cupola cam. You can control where it looks. You can see all around the city year-round. An interesting bit, when I was out taking pictures for my presentation, I called my mom. And I said, "Mom, quick, log on to the cupola cam." And she said, "What do you want me to look at?" "Oh my gosh, that's you!" Because true enough, there's me. I was standing in front of the cupola cam, and she got a picture of me. So at any time you'd like, you can see what's happening in my hometown. Visit this wonderful camera. I truly hope you've enjoyed this little taste of Littleton, Colorado. As a teenager living in this hometown, I can attest to the excellence in entertainment, safety, education, recreation, and community of my hometown. I assure you it's a great place to visit, and it's an even greater place to live. Thank you.
Mayor, the staff would like for you to just read the council communication for the record, because it honors Chip, and then I think Aaron, Ryan, and Devlin, a couple other students that will also participated.
Sure. This evening, the Littleton City Council is pleased to recognize Littleton High School junior Chip Bollendonk as the Houston Waring Student Ambassador for the Bega Littleton City Sister Exchange. As a student ambassador, Chip will travel with a delegation of 30 Littleton citizens to our sister city, Bega, New South Wales, Australia, on March 9th through 26th of this year. Chip will stay with two different host families during the 10-day official visit to Bega, as well as participating in a pre-trip to Brisbane, Fraser Island, and Sydney. Competition was open to all juniors and seniors at a Littleton high school or any junior or senior living in the city. Applicants were required to make a presentation showcasing Littleton, my hometown, and then be interviewed by the committee. Chip took first place and receives an all-expense paid trip down under. The first alternate is Aaron Ryan, a senior at Heritage High School, who received a $300 U.S. savings bond. The second alternate is Devin Leslie, a junior at Littleton High School, who received a $100 U.S. savings bond. The Bega-Littleton Sister City Exchange was formed more than 50 years ago, as Chip pointed out, through the vision of two newspaper editors almost halfway around the world from each other. Houston Waring, editor of the Littleton Independent, and Curly Annabelle, editor of the Bega District News. These two civic-minded men began corresponding in the mid-50s and formulated the idea of a citizens' exchange between their two cities during a meeting of the editors of small-town newspapers. The first delegation from Littleton traveled to Bega in 1961. The Houston Waring Student Ambassador Program began in 1996 due to the efforts of Dr. Ken Connington, who was vice president of the organization at the time. And I think Ken's here tonight, isn't he?
Yes, he is. He's sitting at the back.
There you go. Hey, Ken. Since then, 3 high school students have traveled with the delegation to Bega. The March 2011 trip celebrates 50 years of friendship and exchange visits between the two cities. Littleton's Bega Park, located north of the RTD light rail station in downtown Littleton, commemorates the oldest U.S.-Australian city sister program. The Littleton City Council congratulates Chip on being selected as the Houston Waring Student Ambassador and looks forward to now seeing his winning presentation. Littleton, well, we've already seen it, my hometown. Congratulations, Chip, and that was an outstanding presentation.
Thank you very much.
And we have a little...
He has a little presentation for you.
While they're doing that, I don't know if you could see this from the audience, but and it's quite a juxtaposition for an group of people that have been in association for 50 years, but he was controlling that whole presentation off his cell phone. No, it was absolutely fascinating, to be honest. Yeah.
Picture of that.
I could see it happening already, Dad.
Wave to Mom.
Where's Mom? Is she up there?
This is not the view from the cupola cam.
No.
Yeah, this is better.
Probably better. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Well done.
I will.
Oh, the technology of this younger generation.
I know, I was just watching the whole iPhone connection.
Yeah, it's just
the back
beyond
laptop
scary.
thing. Yes, it is.
I think that his presentation would be well accepted on the Channel 8 for the City of Littleton information.
Yeah, if you guys can get that on there, that'd be great. And we expect a report when you come back, too, by the way. All right, that brings us to unscheduled public appearances, and you all are welcome to leave, although you could stay if you wanted to. You're welcome to stay if you want to, but you can leave if you...
Biology lab.
Okay, I understand.
Good decision, Chip.
A great presentation.
That was very good. Very well done.
Yeah.
I'm Christina, and I'm in 7th grade.
And I'm Eric, and I'm in 5th grade. We go to Colorado Academy.
We have been involved in the National Radon Poster Contest and won it first in 2008 and 2010. This motivated us to start a radon awareness project for the citizens of our state.
We are working with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, Environmental Protection Agency, and the American Lung Association on this project.
Radon is radioactive. It's the second most common cause of lung cancer after smoking, with over 21,000 people dying from radon-related lung cancer.
We can do something about radon by testing for it and fixing our homes that we live in to make it radon safe.
January is National Action Radon Month. Our motto is Detect to Protect.
The level for action is 4 picocuries per liter. That is when you should retest or fix your home to lower the radon level.
We are here because we want to know what the City of Littleton does for radon awareness or protection.
We want to know your thoughts on
Building codes for new construction to prevent radon from entering homes.
establishing radon testing after remodels and weatherization.
Providing test kits for low-income housing to see if they are safe.
Provide information on fixing or mitigation if levels are high.
Most importantly, we would like your recommendation on how to reach every home in Littleton and make them aware of the dangers of radon.
Thanks for letting us speak to you.
Thank you very much. And if you go over there and give the man in the sweater your address, we will send you a letter with the answers to your questions.
And I will just say, you want to leave this with me? You don't want to let it go? We'll take down your address. Our chief building inspector, Jim Thielen, and the Colorado code officials are very aware of radon, and we work a lot. There are a lot of private testing companies that work in the Littleton area, and so we do a lot with public education and making citizens aware. But I think having people like you try to make the citizens even more aware, that's a very valuable service that you're providing. But we'll send you a letter telling you exactly what the city does. So thank you. That's very appreciative on your part.
Thank you, guys.
You're sure welcome. Okay.
Hey, guys, on that table over there, grab those free coupons. Those are for free Slurpees at 7-Eleven. we went to a new business opening, ribbon cutting, and they gave us those. So grab them, take them, give them to your friends.
Take them all.
Yeah, go for it. Because otherwise, we'll use them.
Yeah. And we don't eat Slurpees,
Yeah.
but we want Slurpees.
Thanks for coming
No,
down.
thanks.
Okay, anybody else want to come down and address us about any issue or questions they might have? All right, that brings us to the consent agenda, which are items that can be adopted by a simple motion. They're normally non-controversial. Our first item is a resolution establishing community development fees.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending Resolution Number 34, Series of 2010, establishing community development fees.
The City Council in December on the 21st passed a resolution that increased some fees and created some fees. There arose some questions regarding some footnotes and some other items on that resolution. This resolution clarifies those items.
I'm going to pull that.
Okay, that's been pulled. Second item is 7B. If you can read that by title, please.
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, authorizing the application for a 2011 Arapahoe County Open Space Grant for the City Ditch Trail Phase 2.
South Suburban Park Foundation is a nonprofit organization that's applying for a $250,000 grant from the Arapahoe County Open Space Program for Phase 2 of Charlie's City Ditch Project. It has to be done through a municipality. This resolution endorses that application and allows that application to go forward.
I'm going to pull that.
Okay, that's been pulled. Item 7C is an agreement with the South Denver Chamber of Economic Development for services. This agreement calls for an $8,000 payment of service for what the Chamber does for the City of Littleton. Next is...
I'm going to pull that.
You're going to pull that? Okay. 7D. Can you read that by title, please?
This is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Littleton and the Regional Transportation District for the funding and operation of the city's shopping cart transportation service.
Our shopping cart is funded by the City of Littleton and RTD. RTD provides about 1/3 of the financing. This intergovernmental agreement allows us to accept money from RTD. They will pay us about $27,000 for 2011 for the operation of the shopping cart.
I'm going to pull that.
Okay. So everything's been pulled. There's nothing to vote on yet, so let's take item 7A. Peggy?
Yes, and I apologize for pulling all these, but since we had the holiday yesterday, I didn't have time to follow up on all my questions and things on the agenda today. So on 7A, I had a question in terms of how to do something.
Okay.
It would seem to me the resolution perhaps should insert the actual wording that we want to clarify. Would that be so, or you don't think so? As in Part D on the first page of the resolution? I thought we normally did that.
Well, what she's asking is, should the language in the resolution itself describe the language that's being inserted? And perhaps, if I may suggest, the easiest way of solving this is to include in the resolution after the end of Section 1 that this updates the development fees as per attachment, and then attach this to the resolution.
Okay, that's all right. But then I have questions, so
Sure.
I guess Jan would be the one to ask. On the second page, the zoning letter, and I know this isn't in highlight, but on the zoning letter, the $50 per hour, is that per full hour, or is it prorated, or how is that? Suppose you only needed 20 minutes for that customized letter. Is it still $50, or is it a third of $50?
This is Jan Dickinson, Principal Planner with Community Development.
The intent is $50. So if it's 20 minutes, it's $50.
If it took you an hour and 15?
Well, then it's $100.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's $50
Usually,
per hour.
Yeah, and the reason for the customized letter is, and we researched this with some other cities, we've been giving our letters away for free, and the standard letter is basically it's just a standard letter that says, this property zone B2, and to our knowledge there aren't any violations or whatever. But the other letter actually is one that is a little more complicated property that required some research.
Yeah, I have a
involved in
question
it, yeah.
on doing it, but if I were looking at this, I would wonder if I got a bill and I thought, well, geez, this must not have taken, 15 minutes to write. But it's a $50 fee, so it's $50 per hour or portion thereof, right? So there might be 1 hour or...
If it's more than an hour, it's another $50.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because there's research involved in writing those letters. It isn't
Yeah.
just sitting and writing the
No,
letter.
that's all right.
Yeah.
And I may be wrong in what I just said, so somebody who's sharper on this. So if it's one and a portion of another hour, how would we phrase that legally? Suzanne, do you?
I mean, if you want to just make that amendment, we'll put in the language to match that intent.
Okay, so we can phrase that way. And the same thing for the record research would apply there, I assume, as opposed to prorated hours?
Grady. Well, I wasn't proposing a proration. I was just proposing the flat, 1 hour is $25 an hour. If it's an hour and a half, it's $25 an hour. But if you want to propose a proration.
No, I'm just, it would seem to me, based on the logic you just gave, that the same type of wording would go for this.
If that's what you'd like to propose. I mean, that wasn't my intent as far as writing this. I wasn't proposing that we do a prorated
You would prorate that?
No, I wasn't proposing that, but if that's something you feel is
No,
important
I
to do,
don't,
that's-
I don't necessarily
have a
want
problem with
prorate, but
that.
I think we need to make clear whether we're prorating or,
Oh, okay.
so if it takes an hour and 10 minutes to do the research, they pay for 2 hours. Yeah, okay. So we'll have to figure out how to get me to make the motion or somebody to make the motion that would express it that way. And then you guys would write the appropriate language. Is that okay?
Sure. I would suggest that you move for the resolution and then move 2 different amendments.
Okay. So I move that the resolution of the City Council of the City of Littleton, Colorado, amending Resolution Number 34, Series of 2010, establishing community development fees be approved, and the council president be authorized to affix his signature thereto.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution amending Resolution 34, establishing community development fees. Now, I believe your intent is to put language in here that indicates that the schedule that's attached here is actually part of that. So I would suggest a motion that says that we add text after Section 1D, its own sentence that says, changing the fee schedule to match the attachment. Is that your motion?
Say that again?
Changing the fee schedule to match the attachment.
Yes.
Okay? It's been moved to add the sentence, changing the fee schedule to match the attachment. Is there a second? I'll second that. Okay. Do we need to discuss that? Jim?
I'm going to vote against this simply because I think in all the motions, all the resolutions we went through in December and earlier in January, this was not the case. This is not the way we did it, and I think we need to develop some consistency, so I won't support the motion.
Okay. Any other discussion? The motion is...
Go ahead.
The motion is to amend the main motion and the resolution to add the sentence, changing the fee schedule to match the attachment. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 4 in favor with Councilman Taylor, Councilwoman Brinkman, and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The amendment is approved.
Okay. Now, I believe your second intent was that you wanted to specify that the hourly rate that appears in the schedule be modified to indicate that that's a rate for the hour or any portion thereof. Is that your intent?
Yes.
Okay. So the motion is to amend the fee schedule so that the hourly rates indicate that they are per hour or any portion thereof.
Second.
Okay.
Sorry, who seconded?
Phil. Hang on, let me fix my notes here. Any discussion on that? Council ready to vote? You're voting on the amendment to change the language to specify that the hourly rate indicates the rate per hour or any portion thereof.
The vote is 6 in favor with Councilwoman Brinkman voting no. The amendment's approved.
Okay. Now, we are on the amended resolution, the main motion.
I have another amendment.
Okay.
I move to strike the second whereas statement in the resolution.
Okay. It's been moved to strike the second whereas. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Strike. Second whereas. Discussion on that.
The reason I move that is same as at our last regular meeting. We have not formally made that determination.
Okay. Further discussion? Council ready to vote? The vote is to strike to amend the main motion and the resolution to strike the second whereas. Peggy?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Stallman voting no. The amendment's approved.
Anything else? Okay, we are now voting on the main motion, which is the resolution as amended. Discussion? Council ready to vote? The main motion, the amended.
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Taylor voting no. The resolution's approved.
Okay. 7B, which is our resolution for endorsing the application by the South Suburban Park and Foundation for $250,000. Peggy?
Yes, I have a question for Mr. Bloston, who's quickly come into the mic. The third
For
whereas...
the council, for the
Whoops.
TV audience, this is Charlie Bloston, Director of Public Services.
The third whereas says the three...
It can be removed.
Pardon? It can be removed. Okay. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Okay.
I did give him a heads up in email today, but
All right. Would you like to make the motion and then do the amendment?
okay. I move the resolution supporting an application to Arapahoe County for open space funds to engineer and construct Phase 2 of the City Ditch Trail be approved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution supporting the application to Arapahoe County for open space funds for Phase 2.
Then I move to delete the third whereas in the proposed resolution.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved to delete the third whereas, which says, whereas the three project partners are committed to contributing the local cash match required for this grant. Discussion.
I want to know why.
Because the council communication that we received says, under financial details, no local match is required, so there'd be no reason for anyone to contribute local cash.
I guess my comment would not necessarily be the same. It's that recognizing there's no local match required, it's actually an improper statement to include in the resolution. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't provide some support, financial support to the project. It's that it's not required.
Okay, further discussion? We are voting on the amendment that removes the third whereas that says the three project partners are committed to contributing the local cash match required for the grant. A yes vote, which is the up switch, removes the whereas.
Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. I need it.
The vote is 7 in favor. The amendment's approved.
Okay. Takes us back to there any more amendments? Takes us back to the amended main resolution, which is endorsing the application from the South Suburban Park Foundation for $250,000 from Arapahoe County Open Space.
The vote is 7 in favor. The resolution's approved.
Okay. Item 7C, which is an agreement, a contractual agreement with South Metro Denver Chamber for Economic Development. Peggy.
Yes, I did have some questions about the agreement. Somewhat minor, but to me they matter. So, in Exhibit A, no. Chris, am I going to ask you and John both, or just you?
This is Christian Gibbons, who's our Director of Business and Industry Affairs.
What
What was the question? I'm sorry.
No, so I'm going to ask you, and then maybe John will
right.
comment too. In Exhibit A, Item 8, and I'm assuming this is pretty much what we've been approving all these years, this document.
I don't think this document's been amended for a long time,
Yeah.
Dr. Cole, yes.
And, you know, I hadn't noticed some of these things before,
Sure.
but as we get more and more technology, a couple things kind of popped out at me. So in Exhibit A, number 8, it mentions using such techniques as videos, slideshows, attendance at conferences, and recruiting missions to various locations. I'm wondering, indeed, might we not be also using some social media and websites and things like that?
I'm going to let John answer.
Either John or Bart Saya, either one. This is John Brackney, the president of the South Metro Chamber of Commerce. Bart Saya is also here tonight, who's the director of the Economic Development Program for the Chamber.
The question is, are you guys plugged into social media, and do you use that, or will you use that for? The answer is yes.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor,
and I
honorable
see
members of the
that.
council, thank you, Councilwoman Cole. You know how much I use it personally. I'm a
Yeah,
fan of
but
yours.
that's why I'm raising the question.
I think there are a couple different points, and you'll see in there. There's including one with an IBM computer, which some of that is just obsolete in today's technology. Anything you'd like to add using Web 2.0, which would be the official word for social media, we're delighted to add in there. I'm a fan of Littleton, as well as the museum, as well as friends with many of you and staff, by the way. I think that's very appropriate.
Okay, so I'll comment on that, try to make a motion on that. And the same thing maybe with item 13 on the next page. The Chamber shall publish a newsletter which explores, et cetera, et cetera. So, and how would we do that based on what your good things you're doing?
Thank you, Councilwoman. In fact, if we're making these type of changes, I would encourage you to change it to e-newsletter. It's over a decade ago that we have done a print newsletter.
Okay.
Technology has changed, as you pointed out. We send out a weekly e-newsletter,
Okay.
52 weeks a year, and Littleton is often mentioned in it, as well as a community guide and a community magazine. So you're welcome to, as well as a community map.
So should we say an e-newsletter and guide
And community guide.
We'll get to those in a second then. Item 14, Chamber shall maintain a current directory, et cetera, and I wondered, is that must have been in the past print, but now that's also electronic?
That was at least a decade as well. And so at any time a council member or staff would like to have an Excel version of that directory, we do promise all of our businesses that we don't share email addresses. So with that exception, that we would strike that field, so to speak, or that column of fields. It's an electronic directory. That's correct.
So a current electronic.
And that is available 24 hours, 365 worldwide on the net.
Okay. And then number 15, the Chamber shall maintain a current presentation packet with appropriate facts, et cetera, et cetera. So what would we do with that?
It's an interesting change, Councilwoman. For the most part, businesses as well as residences are all going to the web, and that may have accelerated in the last just 3 years. Very few people use paper anymore. It has all gone electronic, as our young man testified earlier. However, we still do have a relocation packet. In fact, I received one in the request today, and so we send that community guide and the map. So it's probably appropriate to leave, but we should probably enhance websites and other electronic tools if you'd like to be more
So
precise.
shall maintain a current presentation packet and website.
Available information by website, perhaps?
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all in that part. Then on the next page in 3 with the compensation part, time and material, the second bullet there, It refers to Exhibit B, and I don't think we have an Exhibit B.
The way this contract is written, it's a boilerplate contract, and you pick one of those three, and it is marked in the one that they have signed is a lump sum, so that is the paragraph that will apply here. The time and material paragraph does not apply.
Okay. All right. So I'm just trying to keep straight here. Now, so if I'm going to make, well, first we'd make a motion, then we...
Well, Bruce has some questions.
Okay.
And I have a suggestion before you start down the amendment path, which you may or may not
Yeah, I think
take. Bruce.
that's where I'm going to go, too. John and Bert, I get the impression you guys look at this as pretty much a guideline, and you're doing what you need to do to be competitive for our region relative to what other people are doing, and it moves very quickly with technological applications, and this is basically just sort of formalizing a direction as opposed to a lot of specifics. Is that sort of a reasonable approach to the whole thing?
Thanks for the question, Councilman. Yes, I did read it word for word, and it does capture the spirit of our long-term relationship for, I think it's 25 years now.
Mm-hmm.
If we are interested in going and changing it to adequately reflect what our current partnership is, I would suggest a study session at some point throughout the year. I do think it's time to probably update it. But I think the relationship has been so strong and so healthy, both between city staff, council, and chamber staff, and that we haven't had that need. However, I think it's very appropriate to update, so to speak, at some point, but it hasn't been a requirement or a need on our end.
No, and I respect that, and I agree with you in terms of your interpretation of the relationship. I guess I'm maybe going to suggest the same thing I think you might suggest, which is rather than do this piecemeal, maybe send it back to have it updated with sort of the current, if that's what we want to collectively do, let them rework the thing and bring it back so that we can just do it, once and done kind of deal.
Well, I was going to say that my preference is to go in almost the opposite direction of what Peggy is going in, and that is rather than specifying the type of technology within the statements and the exhibits, which then means you end up having to change the exhibit every year and every time the technology changes. I think the better direction to go is to go in the opposite direction and state what it is that you want to have happen, and then allow that to take place through whatever technology and media is appropriate. And one of the examples is item 14 is, I think what we're asking is the chamber to maintain a current directory. I don't think that we care whether that comes out on printed material or electronically, and so specifying what type of media you put it on and putting it in this attachment or the schedule, it ends up meaning that you have to change that all the time. So I think it's better to leave as much of those specifics out of it unless there is something specific, some particular type of technology that we want the chamber to be doing that it's not already doing that needs to be called out. But, for instance, creating a packet, it's whatever method the chamber uses is okay with me, and my guess is they're going to use the method that the people request for. So if they get a call and somebody says, hey, I want a packet, and they want to get something in paper, the chamber is going to produce paper. If the chamber puts it on the web and that satisfies the needs, I'm okay with that because I expect them to be responsive to what the circumstances are. But this schedule in the contract, from my viewpoint, is delineating the types of services that we want from the chamber without specifying the particular vehicle for delivery, unless we have a particular need or want for a specific vehicle. And I understand all of those items that you were talking about, but I don't see anything in the exhibit that would prohibit or hinder the provision of services that we're looking for in each one of these statements, each one of these numbered items for an Exhibit A. However, that's my opinion. So, and I'm one of 7.
And Doug, I support that. Stating newsletter doesn't preclude it being an e-newsletter, as an example. Packet of information can come in any kind of media. I think one of the things that we can have as a discussion, I'm not sure it needs to be in the contract, but I think is more broadly one of those issues from the chamber members was brought up by one of our EDG presentations over the last year, which is how do folks actually get at the information? It's not that it's there and it's available, but how do we actually, as a community, and be in a position where it's found more readily, and that's a challenge that we're not going to address individually in our contract, but is one for all of the chamber members.
But I want to say the questions were good questions because those highlight the changes and the methods of delivery that the chamber is using right now.
So are you suggesting any change in wording or?
Well, you know, from my viewpoint, and once again, this is my singular opinion, on all the items that you saw or that you talked about, I didn't see anything in the exhibit that would prohibit or hinder getting the provisions of services that we were asking for. And to me, the Exhibit A is actually fairly well written to describe what kind of service or what product we want without specifying the method of delivery, with a few exceptions, like the IBM computers on item 16, which is, you know, fine because you've got a Mac IBM trade-off, and this is just specifying these. You should be able to read them on that. But that's, once again, that's my opinion. Jim?
Well, I'll give another opinion. I think we should approve it just as it is today, and there's going to be any changes that the staffs work on that over the next year and present whatever changes need to be done, if any, for the contract for 2012.
But first of all, we need to get a motion for the, whatever it is that we're going to do, we need to get a motion to approve the agreement as it is, and then we can decide what changes, if any. Bruce.
Mr. Chairman, I move the agreement for economic development services with the South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce be approved. Payment for such services be authorized, and the council president be authorized to affix his signature thereto.
Second.
And Bruce seconds it. Okay, now, do we want to make any changes?
Well, I would like to make one.
Okay.
I can see how some of these one could read what you're saying into them, so I wouldn't go for that. But I do think conspicuously missing is the Web 2.0 portion in item 8. So I move to amend Exhibit A to item 8 to include Web 2.0, so such as Web 2.0, comma, and that could include video and slideshows itself, couldn't it, Web 2.0? So we could potentially reword and just leave out some of that stuff. Is that, so I would like to reword the first sentence in 8 to say the Chamber shall actively recruit businesses to the South Metro area, including Littleton, using such techniques, it's a little different, but as Web 2.0, attendance at conferences, and recruiting missions to various locations. Is that?
Okay, the motion I think that you're proposing is on the second sentence in item 8, inserting Web 2.0 after the as and deleting video, comma, slideshows.
It's going to die for lack of a second.
Is that it? Mm-hmm. Is there a second? Okay, that dies for lack of a second. Any other motions or amendments? Okay, we are on the unamended agreement to approve the agreement for the economic development services with the South Metro Denver Chamber of Commerce. Discussion. Council ready to vote?
Vote is 7 in favor. The resolution is approved.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry, the agreement's approved. It's not a resolution.
All right, 7D, which is a resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement with the Regional Transportation District for shopping cart funding, where they're proposing to give us $27,000. Peggy.
So I get to ask some questions here.
Sure.
In the resolution, the first whereas refers to the county, residents of the city, and the county. And that is in there twice, and I'm wondering which county we're referring to, since we have part of Littleton and 3 counties. I mean, does it,
We could change it to "and the 3 counties" instead of just one.
or just omit?
Well, where does the shopping cart go? Does it? I don't think it
In the
goes.
city of Littleton.
I don't think it goes in
It
the
doesn't go outside, that's right.
because it has a specified route, and I don't think that goes outside of Arapahoe County.
That's what I was looking, and I didn't see any in there either.
Yeah,
But
which is
when,
different than the omnibus.
Yeah.
so
The mayor's correct on that.
Well, I think it could pick up, there's some mobile home in Jefferson, in Douglas County, so I'm assuming.
Yeah, the Woolhurst is split.
Woolhurst, so I assume that the shopping cart could pick up somebody who actually lives in Douglas County. I don't know that if it would pick up anybody in Trailmark or not.
But we do pick up only in the city, so would we need to?
You could just delete "and the county" every place it appears, and I think that'd get you there.
The shopping cart is a set route. The omnibus is the one that goes out and picks any place up in the city of Littleton proper.
Right.
Yeah, but as Jim was pointing out, it stops in Woolhurst, if I believe, and Woolhurst is the mobile home park.
We'll make
Woolhurst
sure the
Landing?
driver stays on the Arapahoe County side of the line.
Okay.
We'll give those instructions to the driver. We can put GPS on the bus, make sure that they stay in Arapahoe County.
Or we could just take off the "and the county," either one.
It shows the actual stops.
True.
The chart, or the attachment.
So are there, I'm sorry, any more questions?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
On the actual stops, since there is no longer an Albertsons, are we referring to that shopping area still? I mean, it would still stop there, but there's no Albertsons. Or am I forgetting an Albertsons someplace? That's in the middle column on the Monday, Friday.
I see it. I'm going to have to check with Wendy on that and see.
I don't know what you'd call either one of those shopping centers
I don't
now.
either, because there's not anything there anymore, but I know
Yeah.
that some of our seniors go there because there's a haircutting place in there. And so it's just been called there. It doesn't, I don't know what else it's called. But everybody from the omnibus refers to it as the Albertsons. So, from the shopping cart, refers to it as the Albertsons stop. So, I don't know.
Is this Plant Canyon?
Yes.
We could say formerly referred to as Albertsons. We'll
Yeah,
change
I just think that if we're trying to keep
formerly
track.
known as Albertsons.
And
so
then,
like a rock store.
this is minor, but there is no South Glen Mall anymore either, so the various places that say South Glen Mall should be streets of South Glen. Right, one of these years, some people aren't really going to keep calling it South Glen Mall, but most of us still do, so. Anyway, I would just like those to be corrected, so. But we need a motion, main motion first.
We need a main
right?
motion first.
Okay, I move that the resolution authorizing the intergovernmental agreement with the Regional Transportation District for the shopping cart funding be approved and the council president be authorized to affix his signature thereto.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the intergovernmental agreement with RTD for the shopping cart funding. Now,
Then I would move to amend the first whereas to delete the phrase "and the county" in the third and fourth lines.
okay, it's been moved to delete the phrase "and the county" in the first whereas. I will second that.
I'm going to ask a question, since there is service to the streets of South Glen, which is not in the city. The service is actually provided to retail and commercial establishments that do go beyond the city limits. I ask the question, how do we reconcile that?
Where do you?
Well, it's kind of reconciled by taking the county out.
But I'm saying the streets of South Glen are not in.
Okay, I would suggest, Phil, after we dispose of this motion, I would suggest we take out on the second, on the 1, 2, 3, fourth line, where it says retail and commercial establishments at various locations, change from within the city to various locations, which would be one potential way of fixing that.
You want to make that a friendly amendment?
No, let's get this out of the way first, so, because otherwise I'll get confused.
Okay.
So, we have on the floor the motion to delete the phrase "and the county" that where it appears in the first whereas. Discussion, ready to vote?
The vote is 4 in favor with Councilman Taylor, Councilman Stallman, and Councilman Trujillo voting no. The amendment passes.
Okay, Phil.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we amend the now amended main motion to strike the words in the fourth line of the first whereas, strike the words "within the city" and replace them at various locations included in the attachment B.
Can we just say within the to various locations? Because that way I don't have to write it all out.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Changes, you got to move it again.
I'll second it.
At various locations, leave it that way.
All right. The motion that Bruce has seconded is to change the fourth line, the phrase "within the city" to various locations. At various locations, I'm sorry.
That doesn't make any sense.
Sure. Commercial and retail establishments at various locations.
With transportation to and from various medical, retail, and commercial establishments and
No,
various.
no, fourth line.
I know, but when you read the whole thing as a sentence, never mind. Let's vote.
Okay.
I do.
Council ready to vote?
No, I have a question.
Sure.
It does raise an issue about our transporting people elsewhere. If we don't include the list of places that is on the attachment, isn't that an important omission? Potentially, do we set up a possibility where somebody could go 2 or 3 counties away? I mean, on the list?
But remember what we're doing here is we are approving an intergovernmental agreement which binds us in an obligation to RTD to provide the services delineated in the agreement in order to get the $27,000. So the more specificity that we put into the agreement, the more opportunities we have to violate the agreement. if RTD is happy taking the agreement where the whereas says various locations and not having an attachment that delineates the route, then that's actually in our best interest.
And the part where the language is that we just put is in the resolution, the IGA is actually then further attached and references the attachment B is in the actual IGA itself.
Yes.
And we're required by RTD to attach that exhibit to show where we go, because these are places that they don't provide.
Regular scheduled bus service.
Yes.
And they want to get some, make sure they're getting something for the money.
Yes.
So, now, Ms. City Clerk, I don't believe that we have voted on Phil's amendment, have we?
I'm sorry, no.
Okay.
We have not.
So, we have the amendment, which is the second amendment that changes line 4, replacing the phrase within the city to add various locations. Are we ready to vote on that amendment?
The vote is 7 in favor. The amendment's approved.
Okay. Now we have the main motion amended on the floor, which approves the resolution with those changes. Any further discussion? Council, ready to vote? We're voting on the amended resolution.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. We just finished our non-controversial consent agenda, which brings us to item 9A, capital construction projects.
Yes, Council, our Public Services Director, Charlie Bloston, will present this item to you.
It's a little hard sometimes to follow a 16-year-old and 2 younger people who made such excellent presentations. I wish they had stayed so they could hear some of the chaos that I am proposing that will occur this summer in Littleton. There's money in the Special Projects Fund and the Storm Drainage Fund, as well as the General Fund for street and storm drainage construction. As you can see from the council communication, and for those that are watching on television, I will briefly go through some of this. One of the things that I'm recommending here is that we try to get the biggest bang for the buck. For $1.2 million, we need to rebuild some areas and fix some problems that will affect the most motorists. And this has to do with the street construction. The first item is the rebuild of the intersection of Broadway and Mineral Avenue. As anybody who has driven through there, especially from east to west, will notice that there is a drainage pan on the east side of the intersection. I'm proposing to eliminate that pan and rebuild the intersection with asphalt and new concrete areas where needed in order to make for a smooth east-west flow of traffic. I believe that will be beneficial, especially for people traveling from the west to the east in the morning as they hit that drainage pan and have to slow down.
Sorry, Charlie, real quick question. Just clarify for me. I think I know what you mean when you say a drainage pan, but just can you give me...
It's a concrete swale on the east side of the intersection. It's a dip.
Okay.
Everybody who drives it looks at it as a dip.
Okay.
So I'm going to refer to it as the dip on the east side of the intersection.
It basically is a swale where if you go over it at any about 20 miles an hour or more on most vehicles, you may hit bottom.
Your groceries will bounce all over the car.
Perfect.
We think we can improve traffic flow at the intersection so that more motors can get through the intersection, and then also rebuild the actual physical pavement in the intersection, which is now beginning to show some severe rutting. The second project is an identical twin to the one I just mentioned, but at Broadway and Littleton Boulevard. Absolutely everything that I just said. The third project is a construction of a new right turn lane from southbound Jackass Hill Road to westbound Mineral Avenue. If you know that intersection right now, for that traffic that needs to go west on Mineral Avenue, they have to wait in line if there's a car going straight from Jackass Hill Road across Mineral onto Long Avenue. There's not a separate right turn lane. We can improve traffic congestion at that intersection for all directions if we provide this right turn lane. Those are the three contract projects that I'm proposing at this time to come out of the Special Projects Fund. In addition, Council considered last year the paving of South Ridge Way. This street is the last dirt road in Littleton. As you'll recall, citizens of the street petitioned the council to pay for some of that improvement so that they would not be burdened with such a high cost. We're estimating that project roughly $33,000. There is also a drainage component to that I am not including in this cost. It'll be covered later. The $33,000 is the cost just to pave the road after the drainage has been resolved. If council desires, as they discussed last year, to put $25,000 into this project, we can cover that in our Special Projects Fund. That would leave approximately $8,000 for the 5 residential owners in that area. If you take that $8,000 and divide it 5 ways, it's between $1,500 and $2,000 per property.
Charlie, if I recall right, that little division in there was paved halfway, and then the other half was left unpaved.
That's correct.
So now we're going to go in and pave the portion that has not been paved at all, or are you going to pave it all?
No, just a portion that has not been paved. Many years ago, there was a landscape berm put in the middle of that loop street to create 2 cul-de-sacs. The street on the north side, South Ridge Way North, as I refer to it, was paved several years ago at the expense of the residents. This is South Ridge Way South. 5 properties touch this street, and in the past, the councils have approved paving with the property owners paying, if not a portion, all of the costs for the paving.
Will this berm come out?
No, the
Or
berm
stays
will
in?
stay.
Okay.
How much, Charlie, did the residents pay several years ago when we did the other one?
You remember? Yeah, it was a special district. Do you remember how much they, I'm referring to Bob Dees, our city engineer.
I don't recall the number, Charlie.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was. It was, I don't know. I would hesitate to put a number on that right now. We discussed that previously last year, and I don't recall what that number was. I believe it was over $2,000.
Well, that's what I was thinking, so.
Any other questions on the contract paving before I move on?
Yes. On the right turn lane from Jackass to West Mineral, at least the times of day I'm there, that's not that big an issue, but help me understand that one and how much that cost is by itself.
That cost is about, I think the engineers estimated that about $300,000. The congestion on that, Councilman Cernanek, is in the early morning hours and rush hour in the afternoon. And I and another staff member can testify to you that it does back up and it does cause a delay.
Okay. And then with the swale alleviations on Broadway, allowing for the east-west traffic, is that going to do anything to help relieve some of the north-south congestion, particularly rush hour?
No, it will not. There's another project we're working on at County Line and Broadway that might
assistance some of the congestion that's occurring there. The amount of traffic that's headed south in the afternoon into Highlands Ranch, best way I can describe it, it's like putting 10 gallons of traffic into a 5-gallon intersection. There's only so much you can do before you say it's going to back up. The congestion is more at the Broadway County Line intersection than it is at Broadway and Mineral.
And is the solution at County Line and Broadway not a street rehabilitation item?
It's a traffic flow and traffic lane change that's going to be, we're looking at that right now. Craig Fessler, our traffic engineering consultant, has come up with a preliminary plan that might be able to alleviate some of that congestion without a significant expense. He's given me some ideas, and we're brainstorming how to do that right now, and it will involve some cooperation with Douglas County that controls everything on the south of County Line Road.
I'm not going to deny the congestion coming south on off of Jackass Hill in the mornings and the afternoons, but trying to address that constipation that occurs along Broadway, I would place it as a higher priority. And are these competing in these buckets, or is that going to be addressed separately?
It's a separate project.
Say you don't have any money to get it done then.
We're looking at some very creative ideas.
You heard the statement.
Pardon?
You heard my statement.
Yes, I sure did.
Bruce. Charlie, two quick clarifications. The Broadway Mineral, Broadway Littleton Boulevard intersection says you're repaving the asphalt intersection and approaches. I think what, for example, on maybe somewhat similar volumetric kinds of areas, Centennial, I think, did concrete at University in Arapahoe. And I assume that's more expensive, but by the same token probably lasts longer. Are we noodling at all on putting concrete on the intersections?
Yes. And it is more expensive. It is more time-consuming to build and would create more disruption for traffic, significantly longer. And we've noticed in other locations where asphalt meets concrete, you end up with a ridge on the asphalt that is disruptive. And then Street Division has to go in and mill that off on a regular basis. I've seen it done several times at the Dry Creek and University intersection in Centennial. We've had it occur on the concrete portion of Prince Street just south of Santa Fe Drive, where the concrete and asphalt meet. To be honest about it, Council, yes, it can last longer. But the disruption and the construction of that intersection, especially with 2 on Broadway at critical locations of Littleton Boulevard and Broadway, would be very, very disruptive.
Okay.
And would last a long time.
So maybe you're saying something, and I appreciate what you're saying about that. I didn't maybe quite understand. You're going to do Littleton and Mineral concurrently as opposed to sequentially?
We haven't decided on that yet. If one contractor does it, they'll do it sequentially. If we bid it out separately, it could be done at the same time.
Okay. And then the other question I've got is if you mitigate congestion at Mineral, you can conceptualize more traffic trying to get through that intersection faster. Does that sort of beg for another one of the red light cameras?
I'd have to discuss that with Commander Christensen and the police department, but there's been conversations already about doing a red light camera at Broadway and Mineral.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
One other, George.
Sure.
We had a public request for taking a look at some mitigation at Bowles and South Platte Canyon.
You're jumping ahead of me. You're answering the question before I ask it, okay?
Go ahead.
Bowles and Platte Canyon is actually the next project. If council will recall, CDOT paid us $1.3 million to take over the section of Bowles Avenue from Santa Fe Drive to Platte Canyon Road. We now own that portion of Bowles Avenue, and we have $1.3 million sitting in the bank. We need to use some of that money for a repaving of Bowles Avenue from Santa Fe to Platte Canyon. We also need to do something about the bump that for westbound traffic on Bowles Avenue as it goes past Lowell Platte Canyon intersection. Visualize this. You're going west on Bowles Avenue, you passed the former Albertsons location, you start up the hill to the stoplight at Lower Platte Canyon, and just as you get to the concrete portion on Bowles Avenue, you got to slow down because there's a significant jolt right there. We're going to look at how we can eliminate that bump so you can cruise right up that street. That will help traffic flow. At the same time, in response to a citizen request and what we think is a legitimate issue, is to look at some possible safety improvements at the Bowles-Platte Canyon intersection, especially on the west side. There's traffic that's turning from northbound Platte Canyon to westbound Bowles that has to make an awkward turning movement. Part of that is because of the alignment of the streets, and there's not a whole lot we can do about that. But again, Craig Fessler and I have started brainstorming some ideas on how to improve safety at that location. One, by looking at the accidents and seeing if there's a common thread there, or two, just watching it and seeing where the delays are. What's causing some of those accidents? What's causing the slowdowns? All of that we propose to take out of the $1.3 million that CDOT has paid us, not out of the $1.2 million in the Special Projects Fund. Council, if you see in the communication, I also indicated that's a lot of engineering work for us. We're down one engineer on our division. I don't know how much of this we can really do. I know that the projects that we talk about out of the Special Project Fund, we can manage. How much needs to be done on Bowles Avenue will depend on how much engineering is required. If it's just strictly a rotomill and overlay of Bowles Avenue from Platte Canyon to Santa Fe Drive, that's a fairly easy engineering project. But when you get to the intersection, it could involve some extra engineering and construction. To be honest about it, we may get all this engineered in 2011, but we may not build it till 2012. That $1.3 million could be carried over to 2012 once we determine a course of action.
Charlie, that 1.3, wasn't there some of that that was designated for a different use?
It was designated for the improvement on Bowles Avenue from Santa Fe to Platte Canyon Road.
Wasn't there something in there about a portion of that was for water, sewer? What was that?
No. We can use it for landscaping, lighting, concrete improvements, anything to benefit Bowles Avenue.
When we bought that road, there were two numbers that totaled 1.3.
I'd have to check.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that, but I know we have 1.3 million, and the contract we have with CDOT says we can use it for this transportation purpose.
Charlie, I've had several people ask me about red lighting the Bowles, Lowell, because of the just the way you come off that hill. You know, you're hitting a pretty good speed, and I don't know what the accidents are there right now, but they were requesting one of those red lights up there if possible.
Councilman Trujillo, I think, to the best of my memory, I think Commander Christensen, I think we've had the company, and I'm drawing a blank on who the company is, go evaluate those. I think we've also had them evaluate Mineral and Broadway. And I think they're preparing, because, we have to amend that contract with the company. And I don't think I'm misspeaking, but I think the police department is preparing an amendment to that contract to bring to you. And I think at least one of those turning movements at Platte Canyon and Bowles is included in that. Let me double check that tomorrow. As you know, right now, Commander Christensen's been hugely busy with the move into the new police building, but I think they are preparing a revised contract to bring to council, and I think they've evaluated that intersection, so that hopefully will come to you in the next few weeks. If I'm wrong, I'll make sure I get out a memo to you tomorrow, but I'll check with police department tomorrow on that.
Thank you.
Further on street paving, Council, if you'll see on page 2 of the communication, and again for the benefit of those who are watching on TV, I will list to you the projects that our street division or in-house crew would like to road a mill and overlay this summer. This is in addition to concrete work. First one is East Nichols from Logan to Pennsylvania, Grant Way from Broadway to Lincoln, Snowberry from Bowles to Tule Lake Drive, Park Hill from Windermere to Datura, Fair from Windermere to Datura, Euclid from Broadway to Acoma, Bemis, Prescott to Dry Creek Road and adjoining cul-de-sacs of that area. This is in the Southbridge neighborhood. And then Hinsdale from Windermere east to the cul-de-sac dead end. Total cost of this work is in excess of $196,000. That's only for supplies and materials. That doesn't include labor or equipment. That does leave us money for pothole patching, crack sealing, and other immediate repairs that are needed. It also assumes a cost of asphalt will not change from 2010 to 2011. So if we do see a change, and I will tell you that a significant ingredient in asphalt is oil. And as we all know, the cost of oil, the cost of gasoline have risen. We still think we're safe with this budget for doing those projects.
Could we back up just a bit here on the storm drainage fund, capital improvements on page 2? Down here on the contract projects, removal of accumulated silt in the railroad depression ditch. Now, is that the ditch that starts approximately at Ridge Road and runs to the flood control that goes down into the river?
Yes, it is. I'll cover those in just a minute, Councilman Trio. I just have to ask if there are any questions regarding the street division paving. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Charlie, I guess just two questions. Do you guys, if you're going to do a lot of this work, do you guys have the ability to pre-buy any of the asphalt at a given price to sort of hedge it, or do you just take it at spot market whenever you do a project?
No, we bid it out later in January, February. There are several companies that will bid on the asphalt supply. We usually take the low bid and the second low bid. And the reason we do that is sometimes we'll go to a supplier and the line of trucks waiting to get asphalt is so long we'd rather go to the other supplier. And typically also for the Southbridge, and in this case Oak Brook neighborhood, it's easier for us to drive to Kiewit, which is down in Levere's, than it is to go north to get our asphalt. So we actually bid it and use two suppliers, but we hold the suppliers to a price that they bid on in February.
So it's fixed price?
Yes.
Okay. And the other question, deciding which of these projects to do is part science, part voodoo, I assume. But so, for example, just some of the streets, you and I have had some conversations about, for example, Crocker. And I know that's on your list over here, and just the whole issue of how does, for the sake of an argument, Snowberry or Euclid is a good one. How do you guys make the determination, relatively speaking, to suggest that, or to put Euclid on the list as a higher priority than Crocker, out of curiosity?
Crocker's a long street, Councilman Stallman, that would take a great deal more funds. Also, we looked at that and said, is that really contract work and not in-house work? We can't rebuild streets with our in-house staff. We can roto-mill and overlay, but we can't rebuild a street from scratch, such as we've done on Rio Grande, is a great example.
Okay.
So we hire contractors to do that on projects that are too big for us. We just don't have the equipment and the staff to go do a large street, and Crocker would be one of those. When you're looking at some of these other streets on the list that I gave you, our staff can do this work.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about streets?
I'll mention one more thing, because those in the audience, and I'm not going to read all of these, there are other streets in Littleton that need some attention. However, I will tell you, Council, the streets in Littleton are in very good condition. We want to keep them that way. And that's why I'm recommending the program that I just went through, and I'm also listening for you to see what's into the future. Can I put this in a 5-year plan? I could, but it would change every year.
Yeah, just one comment on that, Charlie. I mean, looking at that list, knowing that South Suburban is going to be moving their service center come next October, I think is their current estimate. Waiting to do the Jameson and Windermere Street until after that to do any major work seems to make sense.
That's called common sense, and that's what we would propose. It's also quite an expensive project to take all of Jameson and Windermere from Broadway to Mineral. It's a big project, and it needs to be a rebuild, not just a mill and overlay. But you're absolutely right. Wait till South Suburban is gone from there in order to do that work. Council, that's the street program. I'll talk for a few minutes and try and be brief on the storm drainage.
Another question on that. So in the list that's not getting addressed this year, on page 3, are those sort of in priority as their current condition is?
The only ones that I believe would be in priority would be the first 2.
Okay.
The Jameson and then Bemis Street from Littleton Boulevard to Shepherd is in pretty rough shape. Bemis Street is about as old as it's old. And it would be a very expensive project and needs to be done. Jameson as well. Those are 2 very important streets that do need to be rebuilt. Other than that, the rest of that list is not in any priority order.
Okay. Is Bemis a rebuild or something?
It's a rebuild.
So that's significant.
Yes,
Yeah.
with some significant concrete work in addition.
So, I mean, I'm glad to see it near the top there. I would comment in my head, because it gets so much attention even from visitors because of weddings in the Rose Garden and in Stern Park, and people parking for various Western Welcome Week activities and candlelight walk and so forth. Having that improved when you feel we can do it, I think is really part of a marketing tool for the city too. And it's a safety concern for me, particularly with the people who go to the weddings and come in, some of them in pretty elegant shoes, and they park and walk across the street either to the wedding or walk back across the street and go to one of the pavilions for a reception. To me, it's a safety issue too, because some of that, as you know, is a bit exciting. So anyway, but I appreciate that you're calling these shots the best way that you see, and I'm not pushing you.
I understand your concern. In regard to storm drainage, as Councilman Trujillo mentioned just a few minutes ago, the railroad drainage pan at the railroad depression needs to be cleaned out once every 25 years, whether it needs it or not. It's been about that long. Also, we're proposing the construction of a low-flow drainage trickle channel in the drainage channel adjacent to the Turf Club apartments on Federal Circle. In addition, some years ago, we did construct a concrete trickle flow drainage channel in the Nevada ditch drainage area to the east of Federal Boulevard between Littleton Golf Course and the Centennial neighborhood. We've been asked to extend that. It's on our priority list. We would like to take that a little bit further to the next golf course bridge. And the only way to describe it, it's the bridge between the 6th green and the 7th tee of the Littleton Golf Course, and then it would stop. And we do not propose to ever extend it further to the east to the river, because the rest of that drainage channel does cleanse the water, the drainage water that comes down there before it gets to the river, which is a very important environmental concern. The other, the Bemis Street, this is the Bemis Street ditch on the east side of Bemis Street, right in the vicinity of Stern Park. This is actually the location of the original historic city ditch. The water for the city ditch was put into a pipe further to the west, so this has been an abandoned irrigation ditch, but it does serve a drainage purpose. And Fred Bremberger and Bob Deeds from our engineering staff are recommending that we do something there in order to eliminate the stagnant water and mosquito problem that occurs in this drainage ditch adjacent to Stern Park. Not sure exactly what they have in mind, but something to eliminate that standing water situation. In addition, if council does decide to do the South Ridgeway paving, there's a project of $35,000 to install a storm sewer at that location. If you say, no, we don't want to do that paving project on South Ridge, say at $25,000, then that $35,000 project gets delayed until later. If you look at the next page on the communication, page 3, I listed some projects that we have sent to Urban Drainage and Flood Control District, asking them to take these projects on, and it's totally at their cost. First one is the Lee Gulch Highline Canal erosion repair, which is actually already planned and underway right now. I don't know if they actually started the work yet. I haven't been out there recently, but they're planning on doing it, and they've hired a contractor totally at their expense. We asked them to do some erosion repair on Lee Gulch, the south bank of Lee Gulch, west of Santa Fe Drive, adjacent to the Lee Gulch property that we acquired last year. Also, an erosion problem at Lee Gulch and Carboni Park near Heritage High School. An improvement on what's called Three Lakes Tributary, which is in the Coventry development. You'll say, well, wait a minute, that's a private neighborhood. We have a drainage easement through their neighborhood for this improvement. And then Little's Creek, just west of Broadway, needs some work. I'm predicting that we will not get all, I know we won't get all of these. We got the first one, we may get the next two. I don't expect the final two ones to be done in 2011. They will carry forward to 2012. I thought I would just mention those to you because we did submit those to Urban Drainage. Council, I'll be glad to address any questions on the drainage issues.
Bruce.
The technical reasons or the need for doing these low flow trickle channels is can you talk about that for a minute?
Sure. You've got standing water in these two drainage ditches. The first one is west of Federal Boulevard that goes up towards Centennial Elementary and then curves to the north on the east side of Irving Street. And then you have what was the old historic Nevada ditch from Federal Boulevard east to the river. The water stands. It doesn't go anywhere, and there is some significant growth of noxious weeds. There's rodents. It smells. Standing water that is not advantageous or beneficial to the adjoining neighborhood. And it does require, it would make it a lot easier from a maintenance standpoint if we had the concrete channel in the bottom and were able to maintain the ditch better. I can tell you, I've been there, I've seen it, and it's unpleasant. And of all the priorities for drainage work in Littleton, these have been on the list for quite some time. And since 1986, when the then City Council instituted the drainage utility, which is a $2 charge to every home in Littleton, additional charge to multifamily, commercial, and industrial properties, we started out with a significant list of drainage projects. And in working with the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District and using our own money, pay by you go, we have accomplished a lot of drainage work. We're getting, I don't want to say towards the end of the list, because more projects keep coming up as we get rid of others. But these were projects that were very low on the list 15, 20 years ago that have now worked their way to the top.
How's that for an answer to your question, Council?
Good. I like that.
Next time I'll stop the essays.
We need it to trickle, not stand.
Missed the chance to plug the no increase.
That's what it's for.
That was a flood of information.
You missed the chance to plug the no increase in the storm drainage fee. I'm surprised at you.
I've given you a deluge of information.
Oh, yes, you have.
I'll stop there.
Does anybody want to inundate Charlie with questions?
I guess it's part question, part concern. When you started talking this evening, one of the things you said was this is based on volume of use. These repairs are ones that will affect and impact the most people. And I go back down to that South Ridge Way, 5 homes. And between the $33,000 and the $35,000, that's about $13,600 per resident that we're spending on that. If they each pay their own, $1,600, it's $12,000. So can you explain why you put this in here? Is that?
Yes, because last year, actually, council directed me to do this, and that is bring it back when we're going to have our street reconstruction program presented to council for 2011. If you recall, and I forgot the gentleman's last name, Paul, he came to you with a petition signed by all 5 residents saying we want our street paved, and they were asking for assistance from the council to help pay for that. Bob Deeds just mentioned to me that number that was requested earlier, the number that we charged the South Ridge Way North residents for their paving was $2,033.
But the answer to Debbie's question is last fall, the motion or there was a request to staff to bring this back to you because if you remember, you wanted to look at your year-end council, your budget, your revenues and so forth. So it was a specific request from council to bring this project back to you for a second look.
Well, and I recall that coming back as a second look, but the 3 projects you've listed, they're on there. There's a list of 14 bullets on page 3 that aren't on there. So while we ask for it to come back in terms of priorities, in terms of what you stated earlier about the most impact on the most people, I just, that balance, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a council decision. I think you're raising good points, Councilwoman.
Why don't you, Bruce, I was going to ask if there's any more questions, then we can get a motion on the floor, then we can make whatever changes we want to.
So hypothetically, if you weren't directed to do Southbridge Way and you freed up 25 plus 35, so 60K, what would you do off this other list, if anything?
Well, 25 of that is in street allocation. 35 would be in storm drainage. I would bank it. I'm not sure for $25,000 we could get much done here. We could add it into the street division program on page 2. I say street division projects, we could come up with another street or two on that list that doesn't require a reconstruction or rebuild.
Or it would just go into to pothole patching,
Right.
crack sealing, that kind of catch-all category that Charlie described for
Yeah,
you.
we do have a pothole problem. I think some of you have indicated or talked about a situation on Ridge Road about the repair that Denver Water did. They are responsible for fixing that. And we will hold them responsible, and we will work with them to repair that street back to the condition that we require. We don't believe that that city fund should be spent to repave that section of Ridge Road. So I think city manager is right. We would probably just put it into asphalt.
Okay.
At this point.
Jim?
I move the approval of the streets and storm drainage capital construction projects listed in the staff report be granted.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to approve the list of capital projects and drainage projects listed in the staff report. I'm sorry, Jose did. Discussion, amendments. Deb?
Make an amendment to exclude South Ridge Way paving.
Exclude South Ridge Way pavings. I'll second that.
And if I can, my logic on that is simply because I just don't see the logic of having it in here at this point. I think that, again, if we're trying to spend money serving the greatest need at the highest usage, this doesn't qualify. And we don't yet know, we've got $60,000 for pothole patching, and if the money, if you're saying that $25,000 would fall into that and take it to $85,000, then if that isn't used, that rolls over to next year. We reevaluate these again next year. So I just think in a time where we're still tight on a budget, trying to make ends meet, trying to stretch our dollars as far as we can, that seems like probably not, in my opinion, the best use of that money at this time.
Further discussion on the amendment. Jim?
Well, I think that this road, being the only unpaved road in the city, does need to be paved. And I'd rather it go ahead and get paved, but perhaps we need to look at a higher contribution of costs from the residents as opposed to the $25,000. And so, Debbie, I'm probably going to vote against your motion because I'd rather see one come in there that would reduce the city's costs and put more of the cost burden on the residents and get that street paved.
Further discussion.
Yep.
Bruce?
I'm probably going to vote against this as well, and I respect your point. It's a bit of a conundrum. I voted against this back when we first considered it, principally due to budget concerns, but my sense from having looked at the financial reports is that the funding, is running, I think, trending somewhat positive, and I think this particular project could ultimately fall in the category of it's never going to benefit anybody who doesn't live there, and I think you can make that argument for almost any of the smaller streets, but given that it is the last unpaved road and given that they've, I think have had to endure of their own volition to a certain extent some of the problems with that, I'm probably inclined to go ahead and get that one done, although I tend to agree with Jim. I mean, it might be not unreasonable to ask him for a little more contribution to help get it done.
Further discussion?
I have a question of Charlie then. Do you have some estimate of what it would have cost in today's money for the paving that was done on the other half of this circle?
No, I don't.
How long ago was it?
The 90s. Between 95 and 97.
Mid-90s, we're guessing, mid to late 90s.
Yeah.
So close to 15 years with, even if you just look at sort of average 3% a year inflation or something, we might be looking at 45% difference?
It's a longer section of street than the south side. If I recall, there's 11 houses, and I'm just trying to guess that there were 11 houses on the north side, and so you're looking at
I think there are 5 on the south, aren't
on
there?
this 5 on the south. On the north side, I believe there's a lot more houses, but the only thing I'd come up with, it was about $2,033, and it was done through a special improvement district. The same thing would occur if you decide to do the south side. We have to create a special district and charge the residents. And right now, they've submitted a petition asking for us to look into it. And they also said they would prefer to pay no more than what the people on the other side did. But you're right, it was about 15 years ago, I'm going to guess.
It was approved on July 2nd, 1996, and it was for $25,000, the total amount.
There you go. Thank you.
Any other questions? I agree basically with Debbie's reasoning that right now, when we've taken $2 million out of expenditures, that we have to maximize the use of the remaining dollars that we have. And Bruce is right. If you look at the dollars for the number of residents, it's always going to be a problem. But when we're cutting so many other activities and projects, I think that this year or in 2011 with the budget that we have to stretch the dollars and get the maximum use that they have, which doesn't mean that we couldn't look at doing this in the future, or they could look at funding the whole thing themselves, although I understand why they wouldn't want to do that, because that's a pretty big sum of money. But
And I guess I would also say we've taken a look at items that would have saved the city twice this much and not scrape the barrel at that level. I agree that we got to look at some reasonable amount with some element of inflation from the residents as far as their participation. But wouldn't it be nice if Chip could go to Bega and say that we're paving our last street?
all right, the motion is to exclude Southridge paving. Council ready to vote? Biggie?
I did, whoops, I'm sorry. Put it back in neutral.
The vote is 3 in favor, with Councilwoman Cole, Councilman Cernanek, Councilman Taylor, and Councilman Stallman voting no. The motion fails.
Okay, so we're back to the main motion, which is to approve the capital construction projects unamended. Jim?
Well, I want to make an amendment to the same one we were just dealing with.
Okay.
That if the estimate for paving this is $33,000, that I would like to have the total contribution from the city to be no more than $20,000, and let the residents pay the remainder. And that would mean there'd be about $2,600 per resident for their share of this cost of paving. That's a significant increase over the $2,033 that was paid 15 years ago by the people on the north side.
Second.
So hang on.
Basically, the motion is to limit the city's participation to $20,000.
Okay.
That's simpler, right?
Yes, thank you very much. You knew exactly where I was going. Okay, the motion
And
is...
that's the paving. That's, you still have the
Right.
drainage. Okay.
Just the paving.
Just
the
clarification.
paving.
Yes, sir.
All right, the motion is to limit the city's contribution to $20,000. Phil, are you going to second that? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Bruce?
Just a quick calculation. You said it was $2,033 was
1996.
96. 2033. So if you said 3% compounded, your actual, blast. I think it was like $2,815 is the, so you're okay with 2,600, Jim?
Yeah.
Ballparky? Okay.
It's round figures.
Okay.
All right, but the motion is to limit the city's contribution to 20,000, not to set an amount that they contribute. Okay.
Exactly.
So I have a question then. So if this project would come in higher,
Pay the difference.
well, are they, how do you offer to set that up to them?
Actually, there's a public hearing before we do the work with the cost. And then the council makes the decision, and the residents get a chance to discuss with the council if they want to continue or if they feel that's too much. So in the special improvement district process, before any work is done other than engineering, we do the engineering first, and then we determine a cost that is more refined than what I gave you, and then you have a public hearing on that.
Okay.
Actually, we'd have the public hearing on the creation of the special improvement district, I think is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. All right, the motion is to limit the city's contribution to $20,000. Any other discussion? Council ready to vote?
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilwoman Brinkman voting no. The motion's approved.
Okay. Brings us back to the amended motion, which is to approve the capital construction projects as submitted, however, limiting the city's contribution for South Ridge Way to $20,000. Ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
All right. Brings us to 9B.
And Mr. Bloston will present this item to council also.
First of all, I understand that there was a mix-up in the assembly of the communications and that the conceptual plan for this project was attached to another one. I was told about that earlier today, and I was out of town. Council, you have a request from the South Platte Working Group and the South Suburban Park and Recreation District to assist in funding the East Side Trail. They're asking for $100,000. Very briefly, the East Side Trail, again, for those who don't, maybe I could put this up on the screen. South Platte River Trail actually exists on both sides of the river from south of Bowles Avenue, actually south of the old Tortilla Flat Mexican restaurant, north to Prince Street. In that section, there's a bicycle pedestrian trail on both sides of the river. Is that there? That's a little better. The proposal by the South Platte Working Group and the South Suburban Recreation District is to extend the East Side Trail from Prince Street north to Big Dry Creek, which is north of Bellevue Avenue, north of Chenango. They're getting GOCO funding, Arapahoe County Open Space, South Suburban's putting in money, and they're asking for the city of Littleton to put in $100,000. The total cost of the project is in excess of $1.2 million. In order to do that, we're asking for council concurrence from the Open Space Fund of the city. There is money allocated for projects, and I present it to you for your consideration tonight if you want to do it. They have a deadline that they actually have to have this thing built by a certain date in 2011, or at least get started by then. And they're in an incredible hurry to get this project underway. And so if you do allocate funding to this and they are successful with the other partners, which at this point appears to be yes, the project will be underway yet this year.
Questions for Charlie? Bruce?
Charlie, I mean, if I'm looking at the map correctly, it's that area. Basically, this is a parallel to what's already along the river. So the need to do this, I mean, what's driving this? Why do we want, why are they as excited as they sounds like they are to just basically parallel a piece of trail that's already there?
Number one is use. There's an incredible number of people that are using the West Side Trail, and they want to add additional trail to accommodate the existing and future traffic. And they feel that they need a second trail. As you know, several years ago, they installed what's known as the dual trail, which is the gravel pedestrian trail adjacent to the concrete one. If you build it, more people will come, and that's what happened.
All right, well, let me clarify then. Point to your map. The west side part of it I get. That's the black line?
No.
No.
That's the red line?
The red line.
Okay, so then on the east side, the red line, that's the one that's right by the river, and what they're talking about, then what are they talking about adding is the one that's a little bit to the east of the one that's by the river?
No.
Okay, so they're talking about
The
putting
black
one right
line
by
is
the
just the project limits, so don't worry about the black dotted line.
No, on the east side, there's two red lines.
In certain portions, there are.
Is this is what they're talking about?
They're on either
And then
side of
what's
the river,
this?
Bruce.
Line is the new one.
All right, what's this then?
That's kind of cutting around.
Councilman Stallman, it's an extension of a single trail on the east side of the river from Prince Street north to Big Dry.
Well, there's a couple parts, Charlie.
There's a
and-
spur trail as well.
Right, there's two.
But, yeah, I guess what I'm saying,
Yes. The primary trail is the single trail adjacent to the river
Right.
on the east side.
we're talking about building this.
They're talking about starting at Prince Street, down at the bottom of the map,
Okay.
on the east side of the river,
Oh,
following the river north of Bellevue and connecting to Big Dry Creek. You notice that is phase one. They're only discussing phase one at this time. Phase two may be done sometime in the future. Phase one stops at Big Dry Creek.
Charlie, is it fair to say that the broken red line is the new trail?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Charlie?
Okay, so it's this whole thing then. It's this whole.
Yeah.
It goes
There's a
basically.
spur trail that goes up through the Murray property that we acquired last year.
That is part of it.
Yeah. But it's a fork here, so there's actually two.
That's all part of the $1.2 million project.
Okay, all right, I'm with you.
Bill? I was just going to add, because I was at the presentation of this when it was made to South Suburban. At this point in time, they haven't necessarily done the engineering to see whether a dual trail on the east side is going to be something that would be desirable, is to also have a dual trail to match the dual trail that's on the west side of the river. As part of the history, at least ever since, so it's predates 10 years ago, I believe, that the desire was always to have trails on both the east side and the west side of the rivers. So this is not something that's kind of a brand new thing. I think even the South Platte Working Group had discussed it and that. One of the things that's been attractive and that you see at the north side of the phase one is to put a loop in that would be there near the, essentially at the Murray property that we in South Suburban and others partnered in the acquisition on that. There is, if you see just south of Bellevue, also as part of the project is in phase one is a bridge across the river, which is part of that phase one. If you look, there would be another bike pedestrian bridge across the river just north of the phase one side. So there are a couple of river crossings that are set up, and South Suburban approved at their last meeting both the phase one and phase two essentially master plan that have looked at this.
Okay.
And so there's a number of things that go into this from a longer term perspective because you see on the Phase 2 to the east side of the river is the potential for a mixed-use redevelopment. The master plan would hopefully have as part of that a contribution of some of that property that would allow for that loop that's there in the middle of Phase 2, which is not controlled property, I guess might be the word that I would use, probably inappropriately in that. Understand, not necessarily a new idea, but it's now gone through a master planning phase and has a number of other supporters. With the City of Englewood, I believe, has already blessed this too.
Deb?
As a member of the South Platte Working Group, this presentation was shown to us, and there's a couple of other benefits to this. One of the things that they talked about was a connectivity between some of the businesses on one side and the other side, and that some of these bridges that they're looking at building improves that kind of connectivity. One of the other things is, over the last 3 years, we've been purchasing land along here, some of it in little pieces, some of it a little bit bigger parcels, but this really does help gives that connectivity, because the land we've been buying with the working group has all been on the east side. Murray, the Oxbow, all of that has been on the east side, and that trail does end. There's also opportune time at this point to be able to do some of the tricky engineering getting underneath some of these bridges, some of the large traffic bridges that go over the river, because you have to build the trail underneath some of those and make it accommodating to bikes and horses and those types of things, so the height is important. So at this point, due to some engineering things with the river, what could be happening upstream with Chatfield, there's some different things that there's kind of an ideal window of opportunity here. So there's a little more background.
Motion?
I'll move to contribute $100,000 from the Open Space Fund for the proposed East Side Trail along the South Platte River from Prince Street to Big Dry Creek.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to contribute $100,000 for an open space fund for the East Side Trail project. Discussion. Council ready to vote?
Vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay, that brings us to 9C, which is a discussion for the workshop. Anybody have an objection to the agenda?
Say again.
Anybody have an objection to the agenda?
I think it's full enough.
As long as the mayor's there on time, we should be okay.
Yeah, the only item is if we could, I know we had some possible discussions for a working lunch and possibly bringing in someone to talk with us that would be in context with the theme. I think some of us have had an opportunity. We don't know whether Carol Johnson would be available, but that might be a part of a discussion that we could have over a little bit of a working lunch, and that would be consistent.
Actually, she did indicate she's got some availability at lunch.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have it earlier, but this is sort of the tie-in to the University of Denver Daniels School of Business marketing curricula, where they would look at potentially using web-based tools and try to come in and help or look at an inventory of assets and what might be some suggestions for us to consider in terms of enhancing our marketing and marketability at really very minimal, if any, cost to the city, since it would have an academic overlay to the whole thing. And she was talked to a number of us and a number of staff, and then the thinking was she could come in and we could kick it around over lunch.
Jim?
I have absolutely no objection to a working lunch. I would only suggest that if we do that we have box lunches instead of a buffet type, because you waste so much time, and if you're going to have a working lunch where somebody's going to be talking to us, that we deal with box lunches.
If you have a working lunch, then you have to have it with the public. So that means you end up eating lunch in the.
That's fine.
I'm not embarrassed.
Okay.
Council, I do need some direction in terms of content, and at this point, we're not clear. Chris has sent quite a bit of background information out to you. We're not clear in terms of whether you need any additional background information to be developed by Chris Gibbons and his team, whether the background information, the previous workshop reports, and I think Chris has sent out some responses to statistical information. So we're not clear if we need to do any more preparation in terms of background information. So we'd like some clarification on that tonight.
Let me ask a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When I looked at the agenda and saw 2 hours for overview of current economic development policies and programs, it seemed like an awful lot of time given what we've received. It seemed to me not so much focus on overview of certain things, but discussion of possibilities. Because what's in these 2 workshop reports from 2005 and 7, fleshes out an awful lot of issues.
Yes, ma'am. So the time, again, that's why it's called draft at the top. So the time frames there, like, for example, if you wanted more discussion or direction on future policy, if you wanted a 2-hour block there, or if you wanted 30 minutes up front for review and 2.5 hours on open discussion, we can accommodate that.
I mean, that feels better to me, given
yes, ma'am. We just had to start someplace, and so not knowing quite how much detail information you wanted, they were just arbitrary plug-in numbers. But you're giving me exactly the kind of feedback that is helpful.
I think some of the things that I'd like to see, and I don't know whether it fits in overview, would be some components. Certainly the feedback that we may or may not have received from our commercial property owners and managers with that would be included. And possibly having someone, whether it's staff or we bring in others, to maybe level set with regard status of commercial real estate as well as residential real estate as it exists.
So would you like to have some outside speakers invited? Is that what you're saying, Councilman?
It could be. I mean,
outside speakers who deal with commercial and residential real estate. Is that your suggestion?
Yeah. And maybe both folks that represent property owners as well as tenants on the commercial side would be something to kind of hear what they have to say as their flavor of the market.
Deb?
Well, I'm confused a little bit about the lady from DU. I did meet with her nearly a year ago. I guess it's been 9 months or so with you, Phil.
2 months, actually.
No, it was longer than 2 months ago. Substantially longer than 2 months ago, yes. And I had not heard that she would become part of this. I guess if I recall, she was discussing taking on the city as a project to help with marketing and PR, that she would set it up with a group of students. We'd be like a class project type of thing, and that would. So when we're looking at an overview and discussion, et cetera, of economic, and then council's direction for future economic development. Then at lunch we meet with her. Well, if we're interested in working with her, if that's something we want to be a component, then why are we going to talk to her after we've given direction? I mean, maybe it would be better if she had something to prepare, a proposal or something like that could be given to us prior to this, like you're talking about, Jim. What can we have more of? And then she maybe gets some time, 15 minutes or so to present her case, during this.
In that
and then we
morning,
use
sometime
that
during the
as-
morning session.
Yeah, that becomes fodder for more of our
Okay.
discussion. Otherwise, I'm not sure her role after all of that and at lunch is going to be as functional as it might be earlier, if in fact we want to consider that.
I'd like to see her come maybe at a study session instead of during this. I've met with her twice, late November and last week, and the conversations, and Bruce and I met with her in late November, and then I met with her alone last week, and the focus of the discussion with me was in having her students study what Littleton is doing, look at our website, meet with council individually, and do several kinds of things. But she's looking right now at a 4-week course in late June for about a month. And so all I'm saying that maybe she's wanting from us in the next couple of months is some discussion about what the students might do, then to give input back to council from various things that the students might examine. Am I saying that wrong, Bruce, or is maybe this evolving in different ways?
No, I think you're saying it correctly. And I didn't give any context, but just Deb, the lunch issue was completely tactical, as in her schedule. She had availability to come in at that time. Hypothetically, we could move the agenda around to do the direction after lunch. If you want to do it at all. But Peggy, you're correct. Essentially, the orientation, this dates back to last council workshop where we talked about marketing concepts augmenting economic development, as in they're not mutually exclusive, they're supplemental potentially. And so essentially one of the follow-on items that Phil and I went and looked at was to engage resources, and one of the sets of resources we looked at or talked to was the Daniels School, to try to see if there were folks in the marketing curriculum, graduate students or undergrad, who would be willing to come in and as you indicated correctly, look at everything, see what we've got going on, what might maybe some opportunities for us to consider further. No commitment to do anything, but basically, I don't know, use the phrase audit us, and then have interaction with council and staff so that it has an academic benefit, but we're clearly getting value from a world-class educational institution by participating broadly in the process. And that's essentially what we were going to talk about if she was able to come in and then look at that as part of the economic development context. That was where
Kind of makes more sense than I think what Peggy's saying is to bring her in for a study session. Do you think prior to this?
How about
Do we even have time?
how about a suggestion? How about we have lunch before we have the council direction for future economic development policy, and we move the review of the outreach schedule to the morning. So we put that, we have an overview of current economic development policies and programs, we have a break, we have the review of the council outreach schedule, because that's not so dependent on anything else. We then have a working lunch with this lady, and then we can do the council direction for future economic development policy.
I'm fine with that.
Is that acceptable for everybody? Okay.
And then push the PDO overlay back, the 1 o'clock slot. Why don't you just tell me?
I'm just taking the thing that's from 3:15 to 4.
Yeah.
Just moving that up right after the break.
To 10:30? I mean, to 10:45?
10:45, yes,
Okay.
and then switching lunch with the council direction.
So are we still thinking we need 2 hours for the overview and stuff?
Well, that's the next thing we need to address, because they're looking for direction on what we want to be told. Bruce?
Yeah, I was pretty much going to agree with Peggy. I think 2 hours is a lot of time to go over material we've sort of already digested at some level. I mean, I don't have a problem with plus or minus 15 minutes or 30 minutes from a Q&A perspective.
You want to shorten that from 8:30 to 9:30, shorten that review to an hour?
Well, that kind of depends on what we're looking to get. I would like to get a discussion or an analysis of growing versus recruiting, or growing versus marketing, and relating that to incentives.
Can you repeat that for me, Mayor?
Sure. I mean, part of this discussion here is marketing a city or recruiting external entities to come in?
Yes, sir.
Is that compatible or an adjunct to the economic gardening policy, or is that 180 degrees from the economic gardening policy? So,
And do you want that, just so that I'm clear, do you want that programmatically? Because, Chris, maybe you ought to come up here, because I think Chris had sent out some detailed cost estimates before about if the council decided they wanted to get into the marketing business, what he thought it would take. Are you looking for a broader sort of, kind of analysis on a national basis as how marketing matches up with recruiting and economic gardening?
Yes.
Are you looking programmatically here, specifically for Littleton, if you wanted to add a marketing component to the program?
I'm looking at, we currently have $800,000 or so that we spend in the DIA budget. If we were to go out and recruit companies or market the city, and we talked a little bit about this last year, what's the likelihood of success? How many companies move? Where do they move to? How many employees?
So kind of
do
a
they bring in?
national take on how many relocations there are per year, that kind of stuff. Is that what you're suggesting?
Well, that's the basis behind economic gardening, I think, isn't it? Is the
Yes, sir.
proposition that you get more bang for your buck by growing existing businesses, certain types of existing businesses. than
That
you do
was the
trying to
decision that the council made in 1990, yes, sir.
So if it were me, I would look for a discussion related around that specific concept with whatever hard data you can bring.
Chris, do you want to comment on that, or do you pretty much understand the assignment?
Yeah, I understand that. I've got 4 things listed here.
Why don't you step up to the mic so they hear you on TV?
Are we still talking about doing all 4 things that were listed? This is a fairly big project that you're asking. Are you still talking about these other things that you mentioned previously also?
Did they mention them?
Yeah, I guess the question, what I've got here is Carol Johnson from DU, status commercial real estate, from representatives from that industry, feedback from the shopping centers from the letter that we sent out, and an analysis of growing versus recruiting. Is that?
Well, I think we'll probably have to go through and make a motion for each of those.
Okay.
But first, Bruce?
Yeah, let me, if we want to get on that road, I don't have a problem with the discussion, but I just, from a clarification standpoint, I think this goes back to sort of what we talked about last year. My view of the whole marketing concept was there's an awful lot of degrees of marketing, from basic branding to general awareness to web to benign kind of stuff to aggressive campaigns aimed at recruiting people in. So I I mean, I don't have any problem talking about it. I think it's good information, but by the same token, I want to throw the yellow flag up as a caution that says I don't necessarily think we were ever advocating an aggressive recruitment, incentive-based kind of approach, because I don't think that's consistent with what is in the best interest of the city. I don't think we've done that, and I don't think that, I do think that is different and sort of antithetical to what economic gardening is. But the whole Carol Johnson concept was there are ways to augment economic gardening that adds another couple spokes to the same wheel.
Well, it's precisely that I'm having a difficult time understanding.
Okay. So maybe that's a good conversation.
So the way I view this is we basically have what's the facts and what's the rationale behind one versus the other. And then after we hear that, we can listen to whoever this lady is, and she can give us what she thinks is an augmentation or something else, and then we can evaluate that based on the information that we have received in the first part of the morning. Now, this is different than a discussion about shopping centers and commercial real estate. I mean, that you could classify that as a development issue, but that is different than a policy issue on what is our economic development policy, because underperforming shopping centers and commercial real estate and things like that are really, at least my understanding, are really separate issues from what's the policy that we have for creating wealth for the residents, which is really the economic gardening policy.
Well, and again, maybe this is the conversation we have at the workshop. I truly believe they're shades of gray on the same scale, because essentially our telling the Littleton story somehow in a cost-effective manner that's appropriate for what we've got resources to do and what we would choose to do as a council is part and parcel of the whole fiduciary responsibility in terms of wealth creation that ultimately supports the development of shopping centers, if not overtly, then certainly from a secondary perspective. So I honestly don't look at it as binary. I think you've got a range of I call them tools in a toolbox. I think we've had that conversation as well. But I think, economic gardening is a tool in the toolbox to create wealth in the community, as potentially as a branding strategy, a website, so forth and so on.
Well, see, I don't see them as complementary, but my suggestion is if we want to get into shopping centers and real estate issues, then I will volunteer to give up the discussion on plan development overlay and move that to a study session.
I kind of thought you could do it by taking out do both, taking out the 2 hours worth of background.
Well, I think 2 hours, Chris is just getting warmed up. I've seen his notebook.
I think we have divergent views, as I think Bruce sort of hit on here, of a definition of marketing. And I spent, I think, close to 2 hours just last Friday with Dr. Johnson, and I think it would be good for us to hear her get some definitions, understand where we're coming from, and agree on how we're defining things. So part of me would like us, if we're going to do more than the economic development piece at the workshop, is to move certain things up front, have her come in if she can right after that, as soon as she can, and then follow up with that. Because again, Chris has presented stuff to us very, very nicely several times. So it seems to me that there isn't all that much more that Chris needs to do research on. We just got to come at it with clear definitions and some direction. And from what I understand, Dr. Johnson wants her students to. She showed me a draft syllabus, and I gave her my own personal comments on that, and some of the activities that she was thinking about, as I said, for the students to meet each of us and visit Littleton and so forth. I think giving her a chance to lay some of that out would help us give direction for ourselves. But the class wouldn't be giving us feedback on whatever it is that they discover until July or early August, probably July.
But I think we've got that covered because we're having her come in at lunch, and then we're having the discussion for the direction afterwards.
What I'm saying is I'd prefer anything that we have Chris talk to us about, follow our talking to her, so that we can, with Chris maybe then being able to be part of that question-answer clarification piece.
Well, if you wanted Chris to address concepts that she puts forth, then he probably needs to hear that prior to the day that we ask him to expound on it. If we're looking for Chris to do questions and answers after we hear a presentation, I think that's appropriate. But if you're asking her to come in and make a presentation and then for Chris to have an in-depth discussion on it, I don't think we will get as valuable of comment from Chris if that's the first time he's heard this.
Well, so. I think she would be willing, Bruce, you know her better than I do. I think she'd be willing to maybe provide a little written glossary and some comments that we and Chris and staff could see possibly within the next couple of weeks, just some basic terms, the way she sees these things. Again, we're looking at a graduate marketing program, so we can always say we don't like that definition, let's do something different, but at least we can hear the orientation that she has, and I think she could do that very easily.
Yeah, I think she's indicated she'd be happy to do that.
And so that sort of answers your question, Doug. Then we could go back and do some of that before lunch, if we receive that, whether we say we agree with it, with her definitions or not.
I'm becoming a bit concerned who's driving this workshop. I mean, I didn't even know she was going to be part of that until tonight. I hadn't heard any more on it since I'd met with her. I think it probably was summer. So I'm just confused now because this has taken a completely different bent than I had thought it was.
Well, all I know is that Doug and I seem to have significant different view of what marketing is, and mine might be different from hers and each of yours.
I don't even see marketing on our plan here. I see current economic development policies and programs.
Well, Doug used the word earlier.
It's not on our agenda. I mean, it sounds like we need to either redesign why we're going to have what we're going to talk about at the workshop, or focus it back in and maybe divide up what should be at the workshop and what should be somewhere else.
Again, I guess I think the sequence of events here was we got this, and then Phil and I had the commitment to follow up from last year's workshop, which is essentially what's precipitated these more or less pre-meetings, and then the thinking was she would come in at lunch and have the conversation just because that's when she had time. But it was more to introduce the whole thing, not necessarily to change the direction of the or tenor of the meeting. And if having her come in and then having this economic development discussion, we viewed it as a piece of the total, not a completely different direction. So, I mean, if that's not, certainly if people aren't comfortable with that, we can do something different, but that was sort of throwing it on the table because we hadn't really had this discussion before.
And from my perspective, I guess I don't see them necessarily as separate but complementary discussions in the direction. I guess I don't see. I guess I'd have a hard time saying that I have to create a debate between marketing and gardening. I don't see those as being opposition items. Marketing is a whole set of tools on how do you get your messages, and it isn't necessarily always to new, but part of that message is to existing. And so I don't see it as one of those things that's necessarily in conflict with gardening. But the question that we have is, with all of what's going on, what are our opportunities that we might use to set some policy or guidelines? I mean, policy may be too big a word as to what we're going to look to tackle in 2011 and setting our priorities. So.
Well, if marketing has the ability of growing existing businesses, then that's a attribute of it that I don't understand. But perhaps having this lady come in and explain that to us. But
Council, maybe just to throw out a suggestion. I mean, just listening to you here and looking at this, do you want to think about actually just flipping the afternoon agenda with the morning agenda?
But we can't do that from the 4 o'clock on.
But say from, if Ms. Johnson is going to, Dr. Johnson is going to come in and sort of lay out this template of apparently not the complementary economic development that the two council members have in mind, and lay that out, and then Chris has, if we get a syllabus, then Chris can either amplify on that, but at least gives you then, because quite frankly, I'm not sure what you want to talk about at 8:30 on Friday morning. I mean, right now we've sent you lots of
okay,
background.
That's an excellent idea.
Maybe
all in favor
of start out with PDO, possible future open space,
great idea.
Council outreach. Let Dr. Johnson come in, and then you can have this whole discussion about how much philosophical difference there is, or how much, what definition, whether Dr. Cole's definition of marketing is the same as Dr. Johnson's, as Mr. Stallman or Debbie or anybody else, and then you'll at least have a reference point, because at this point I'm not sure, I have no clue as to what you'd expect staff to show up at 8:30 and do on economic development.
So let's try this.
Okay.
And I will do this as a motion. That we change the agenda so that after 8:30 we have the discussion of plan development overlay. And then we have the discussion of possible future open space projects. Yes, I know.
I didn't see that.
Then we have lunch, then we have the outreach schedule. Then we have lunch with this lady. And then we have the overview of what's now called the overview of economic development policies and programs, which would be done in light of material that you get from this doctor, whoever she is.
Johnson, Carol Johnson.
Johnson? Okay. I better write that down. And then we have a discussion on direction that we want to go. Does that give you direction for what to prepare? Okay?
Feel comfortable with that? And then,
I am not going to object to that, Doug, but I want to bring up something that I think you mentioned a while ago. And that is replacing the discussion of the plan development overlay with what Phil suggested on shopping centers and commercial properties and the tenants of thereof and that sort of thing, because it fits more into all the rest of this discussion. The PDO doesn't necessarily fit into the rest of the day.
Let's mush the agenda around, and then you can go in that direction. And I'm not opposed to that either, by the way. Okay? Because otherwise...
so what do you want to talk about at 8:30 on Friday morning?
Do we need to second that?
If you want it to go anywhere, you do.
Second.
Okay.
And I would just add, as a comment to that, change a lunch to 45 minutes and put another 15-minute break in there. Thank you.
And we're still talking about
Now.
You're still talking about, oh, I'm sorry.
Jim,
Well,
do you want to suggest that we
I'm
PDO
willing.
to discussions about shopping center and commercial real estate?
I'm willing to do that. It just seems to fit more into the other discussion we're having during the day. But I'm not going to make an emotion if I'm just going to go down to flaming defeat about changing that in the agenda. So.
No, I can go for that.
I think
But the question is, if we add that, can the staff be ready?
So at the 8:30 slot would be discussion of shopping centers. Okay,
Well-
so then Chris had already sent you a background memo that says everything from urban renewal to shadow development. Now, what we might be able to do is resurrect that, and then we do have the survey out that Mr. Cernatic talked about. So if you wanted us to talk about any kind of results that we got back from the shopping center owners, maybe that would be a informative piece to start out with at your 8:30 slot, since there seems to be interest in doing that. Chris, does that make sense?
Yeah, I can do that, if that's what you want.
Have you gotten any feedback yet?
Okay.
I think those letters just went out.
Yeah, I'd have to check with
First year,
Marlene
so
when the letters, and then we said we were going to do a follow-up phone call, so
Okay.
I think we said we were going to call them, we were going to give them a couple of weeks, and then call them at least toward the end of the month, so.
That's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So 8:30, talk about shopping centers?
No, Jim is moving that,
At 8:30 in the
amend the
morning.
agenda so that 8:30 we discuss possible future open space projects,
Oh.
and then the next item would be the shopping center
Okay.
thing.
Are we
And
killing
then the rest of it's just like Doug outlined.
And then Doug is seconding that,
Okay.
which amends this.
And then shopping centers, then Dr. Johnson, then reaction or response from Chris to Dr. Johnson, and then council direction
Yes,
on
yes,
economic development policy.
yes.
Is that the sequence?
That's the sequence,
All right.
assuming this passes. Okay. So-
Just one comment on the survey results around the shopping centers. I guess I would add some of that is, what's the tenor of the market as far as commercial.
Your original comment up here of
And put
getting
that-
somebody
put that.
who's
I
either a
mean,
developer.
It's not just, the 10 minutes, here's what we heard from
Sure.
the response, but, here's what's
Okay.
going on.
We'll bring in some representatives that are in the industry, so.
All right. Question, Bruce?
So I'm unclear as to what happened with PDO. Did it go?
Goes
bye-bye?
away. It goes away.
Goes away.
Go back
It
to the
goes away.
study session list
And-
where it's lived happily for 2 years.
Okay. And then is the expectation that the last thing we'll do is, or one of the last, we will do the council-initiated project? Is that
Yes,
stated?
and those last two things stay the same.
Those stay in the slots that they're in.
So,
Gotcha.
to
Okay.
You want me
To simplify the voting, you want to vote next on the next, you want to vote yes on the next two votes that we have.
That helps.
And then we
For
can
the
get rid of
record,
this. Yes.
Doug's telling us how we need
For the
to
record,
vote.
just say yes.
Thank you.
So,
I
all in favor
appreciate
of the
coaching.
first thing, flip your switch off.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
Okay. Ready to vote the second time?
The vote, I need one more vote, please, Dr. Cole. The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's
Okay,
approved.
we're done with this item.
Okay.
I thought he already said it was 7.
Thank you, Chris.
So then I turned
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, council.
We're almost to,
One was,
that.
You-
Okay.
hang on. All right, we're taking a break.
Okay.
Come back at 10:10.
I don't think.
Understand. We're on the home stretch now.
Okay, we're back. We're now on agenda item 10A, Board and Commission recruiting update. Wendy?
I have just an update because I was trying to jump ahead of things, and I wanted council to approve the questions that we approved last year for this year, and give you an update of the vacancies that we have. There is one correction on the vacancies down under Planning Commission. It should say under Julio, term limited. But the rest of them are correct, and we have 10 openings. Between term limited, resigned, and not wanting to be reappointed.
Okay. Motion, council.
I move to approve the 2011 Board and Commission questions as submitted.
Second.
Second, it's been moved and seconded to approve the questions as submitted. Discussion. Council ready to vote?
No, I have a,
Council ready to vote?
no. Fine Arts, additional questions, number 6. Given the possibility of budget shortfalls, what, if anything, would you cut from the library budget? Oops. I don't know why we're asking Fine Arts about that.
Okay,
make
good
it some
point.
interesting answers.
Yeah.
That would just, I think, just get cut off.
Going to put it under library?
They already have 6 questions. Here, that's already there.
All right.
Oh,
It is already there.
Maybe it's supposed to be museum budget. Tim's gone, though. That was wasted.
Deb,
Okay, did that
Apparently
have to be
so.
an amendment?
we're just going to, that's a typographical, we're going to change library to fine arts.
Okay.
I
Okay,
can do that.
good. Any other discussion?
Well, then we have to also change the museum board question, number 6.
We're voting. Bill and Peggy, you need to vote.
Wait a minute,
Oh,
we had
I
another
just cut and paste,
correction.
obviously. Sorry about that.
We'll make the typographical corrections.
Okay.
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion's approved.
All right,
Back of land.
10B.
The second piece that I have is that I reserved the community room for February 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, if needed, for the board and commission interviews, and I wanted council to approve those so that, just firm them up.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday evenings, correct?
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, those are.
Okay, motion, please.
Move to approve 2001 Board and Commission interview schedule as submitted.
Second.
Okay.
And my only question is, those were evenings, and were we going to set a start time? Because
We started last year at 6 p.m. If you'd like to continue that,
okay.
that would be great. Well, I only have 4 applications at this point, so.
I think once you get closer to, we get closer
To the
to
31st,
how
I
many
think
you
so,
have,
too.
then we can fine tune that.
Yeah.
The problem is that we do not have another meeting before the 31st, except for the study session. So just be thinking about it.
Jim?
I might have a conflict on the 24th, and if we get a lot of applications, is it possible we could start earlier on the other 2 days and not have one on the 24th?
That would be up to council. I'm
We've
up for any time.
We can decide that later.
We can decide that later, but my guess is, based on the number that have applied so far, we will probably be okay.
And the number of openings we have.
Yeah, and the number of openings that. All righty. Council ready to vote?
The vote is 7 in favor. The motion is approved.
Okay. You're welcome. Mr. City Manager.
One very quick item, Council. At the January 3rd meeting, Dr. Cole had asked about code enforcement coming to a study session. I did, if you recall, the Council directed me to speak to Mr. Thielen. At this point, he does not feel like there's sufficient enough discussion to bring to a study session. He's going to bring some very minor code amendment tweaks to Council, but other than that, he thinks that the program has sufficient legal tools. So I wanted to report back because you specifically requested
I'm
that.
comfortable with
Yes,
that.
ma'am. That's all I have.
Okay.
I don't have anything.
Jose? Nothing? Bruce?
Just a couple of quick things. A lot of you received or had the 7-Eleven Slurpee cups in front of you, and there were a whole bunch down there, and that originated with the ribbon cutting this past week at the 7-Eleven near Aspen Grove, roughly Mineral and Santa Fe behind the RTD park and ride, or parking area. The franchisee who opened it is a fellow named Raymond Sandu. It's his third store in the state, all in the metro area, and they really did a nice job. They did a real big blowout. They had a radio station there, and everyone was having fun, and it was a lot of high energy, and a real good location for them, given the park and ride area as well as Aspen Grove. So if you get a chance, stop over to the 7-Eleven at Mineral and Santa Fe. And that, of course, is the ever-popular, often imitated, never-duplicated merchant plug of the week. The Littleton Public Schools Board of Education met on the 13th, and let's see, a couple of items of note. There was the Board of Education, or the LPS Board was honored by the State Association of School Boards, and there was a little bit of confusion, I think, in the Littleton Independent. They actually were notified that they had won the award prior to the November elections, and then they were presented with the award after the elections in December. But myself and Keith Gardner, who's the city council representative for Centennial, were able to provide some appropriate acknowledgement and appreciation from the respective cities, and Kelly Nardi was, and she's not here, but I wanted to thank Kelly for her support in terms of putting some comments together to help me do that. A couple interesting tidbits of information. The state is still cutting and slashing budgets, and there's an expectation that, notwithstanding the mill levy override of about $12 million that was approved in November, that a fair chunk of that, maybe $2 to $3 to $4 million worth, is probably going to get consumed in backfilling additional state cuts based on and I wrote this down, and I can't remember what it is. I think it's the School Finance Act. There's what they call negative stabilization factors that continue to become more negative. So while we as a community are light years ahead of many, many other communities, we are by no means out of the woods in terms of having ample funding to support the students who, as you saw tonight, richly deserve our support. There's also work being done to close achievement gaps for students where they are English language learners or developmentally disabled students. And again, one of the big problems that the district runs into is that special ed, for example, targeted state funding is supposed to be 80% of the cost incurred, but it's technically only running about 17%. And that is contributory to a lot of the funding gaps and the reasons there's insufficient funds to do what's mandated. Now, I will do this quickly, but I've always heard that, for example, in LPS there are 47 non-English languages that are fluently spoken among the various schools. And I've heard over time a number, 30, 40, 50 languages, but I never knew what the languages were, and now we've got a list. And I actually thought this was fascinating. So just very quickly, and this is actually sort of fun. You'll actually enjoy this, honest.
So stay awake.
Yeah, well, think of it as Trivial Pursuit.
Okay.
I'm going to list these off very quickly. A lot of them you're going to know, but I'll ask you when we get to a handful of them if you know where the language is spoken that's being spoken in LPS, where it's natively spoken. So, for example, the first language is called Farsi. Anyone know where that's?
Iran.
Yeah, Persia, Iran. Okay. Albanian, Amharic. Anyone know where Amharic is spoken? It's Ethiopia. Arabic, Armenian, Bengali, Bulgarian, Mandarin and Cantonese, Chinese, French, Creole, Czech, Dutch, French, Frisian. Anyone know where Frisian is spoken? You might know. Yeah.
Why would I know?
Experience. It's actually spoken right around Germany and Netherlands.
Yeah.
I thought you were in World War II. I didn't know if you...
World War II?
Yeah, you were...
World War I.
Oh, there you go. German, Hindi, Hmong is a language spoken in Laos. Indonesian, Italian, Japanese, Kannada, and it's not Canada, just in case you were... And I'm actually fluent in Canadian. You are from Canada, or not you are, eh? Yeah. So Canada is actually fairly easy to pick up. But Kannada is spoken in India. Korean, Lithuanian, Malayalam is spoken in southern India. Karen is spoken in Burma. Nepali, Punjabi is Indian. Polish, Portuguese, Russian, Serbo-Croatian. Shona is a language spoken in Zimbabwe, Somali, Spanish, Swedish. Tagalog is spoken in the Philippines. Tamil is spoken in Sri Lanka. Thai, Vietnamese. Tlingit is spoken in Alaska and British Columbia. Croatian, Lakota, Paluan is in Micronesia. Sudanese, Tigrinya is in Eritrea, which is near Somalia and Ethiopia. Bosnian and Liberian English, which I don't know, sort of sounds like English but isn't. So there you go, 47 languages spoken in the Littleton public school system, which I actually thought was sort of fascinating. That's all I've got.
Did you mention Spanish?
I think I did say Spanish, yeah. Yeah, I did say Spanish.
Right.
And Canadian, so 48. That's all I've got.
Yep.
The Littleton report will be coming out a couple of weeks or so, and the order form for trees will be in there. The city is again doing their tree program, $30 for bare root and $45 for burlap wrapped ball. And the deadline for trees, to order your trees, is March 14th, and they can be picked up on April 16th. And more information, plus all the trees, will be listed in the Littleton report and on the website. The first meeting of District 4, my community conversations will be the last Saturday this month, January 29th, Carson Nature Center from 1 to 3. And hope everybody in 4 who has opportunity to come out and join us does. We always have a great time. And I also wanted to just let folks know that this Saturday, January 22nd, the Colorado Center for the Blind will have the memorial service for David Nanny, who lost his life on December 17th in a auto pedestrian accident. The service will be at the school, and it's a celebration of his life. His family and I think a couple of his friends are coming in from the East Coast to be part of the celebration. We're going to try to patch in the 2 survivors who are still recovering at their respective homes. I think one's in Wisconsin and one's in Virginia, so that they'll be able to speak and hear the ceremony and what's, what other people are saying. I think it's going to be a very important event for the school and their healing process. So the community is invited to attend at 2 o'clock again at the school. And good news to report, the latest numbers I have heard on the Healing Fund, which is a fund set up for donations to be received to help with a variety of expenses in terms of grief counseling and some other expenses that the families are facing that aren't covered in other ways. We are over $7,000 in the fund, so the school's very excited about that, and they've actually begun tapping into that fund and meeting some needs that have come up. So thank you to all of those who have donated. The fund is still open. It will be open for 6 months, and so the need continues. And so if you haven't donated yet, certainly your contributions would be well appreciated.
Jim?
Yeah, it's the Littleton Housing Authority received reports on various activities that the staff was involved in with December. Second thing was we're now getting pro bono work on the loan officer approval for rehab loans. The state required that a loan officer initiate all of those and give approval, so we're getting some pro bono work on that. The Fair Housing 101 workshop is going to be put on by the Colorado Civil Rights Division on January 25th, 12 to noon at the Allison Court Community Room, if anybody's interested in attending about fair housing events. I attended a very nice presentation at Metro State College on the Community Action Theater. That's a room that is operated with 7 cameras, screens 180 degrees around the room, and they can do all kinds of fascinating things with it. I see some uses, particularly for the South Metro Drug Task Force, for senior and affordable housing locations, for solar roof possibilities, that sort of thing. I think there's a number of uses that we'll be doing. The management staff, Dr. Cog met and with the people from Metro State, and we went over a very in-depth presentation about what this action theater can do. And the third thing was the 2 people who talked about radon testing today. I wonder if we couldn't look at that like we do the CO testing, where whenever you sell a house or where you change apartments to get new renters, that you have to put that in.
I'll talk to Jim Thielen. I mean, we get, there's a lot of private vendors out there on the radon testing, but I'll talk to Jim and see if there's some other kind of awareness, public awareness promotions that we could do on that.
But I believe they sell, don't they, like they do CO2 detectors?
They do, yes.
Radon detectors that we just require to be done?
You can buy your own, yes, sir. So you want to promote that?
I would promote that because it is very.
Now there is kind of a self-test. There are professional people that'll come in, and then there is kind of a self-test kit. So I understand the one you're talking about, the self-test kit that that people buy. Yeah.
That's all.
Phil.
Jim, found out that I wasn't alone in missing the tour of the police facility, which I had let folks know ahead of time. So Jim Anderson and I would just love the opportunity to get a quick tour sometime. I told Jim he could walk through the facility as long as he was wearing a hard hat, and he said, but I wouldn't know where I'm going, and so we would need some help in that. So
I'll talk to Chief Coogan and get something set up for you.
I would appreciate that. Thank you so much. just to everyone out there in TV land, because everyone in the room has been involved at some level, but just to remind folks of the boards and the commissions and the opportunity to put the application in. If you have any questions off the website, certainly talk to Wendy Hefner. She'll be in a position to help you. The Historic Preservation Board meeting this month is actually tomorrow, with a holiday that was on Monday. A number of us have participated also in some audit committee discussions around reserve policies, both as a committee, larger committee and smaller committees, and going through that. The South Suburban Park and Rec District Board at their meeting last week announced their refi as well as their financing for the location that they're using for the new service center. And they were able to get a rate of 3.05% on their refinancing, which within 2 weeks later was up about another 20 basis points. So they got a pretty favorable rate, and given today's market. They did provide the master plan approval for the east side trail along the South Platte River that we saw earlier. Also, thank you from myself, particularly for Hudson Holidays and arranging that, Rich Meredith and the group there. Their attendance for this past season was up 85% over 2009 in that. And also it was reported at the board meeting that some frustration with the progress of all projects, I guess capital projects, because of the Marcy Gulch activity is going slower, and I know we've contributed in part to that. And with regard to the South Metro Denver Chamber, with the Economic Development Group met last Friday. Presentations from DaVita, which is a company that's involved in renal dialysis on a national, if not soon-to-be international scale. They've chosen to put their world headquarters in Denver, not too far from Union Station, and they went through their decision process and how to relocate to the Denver metro area. So it was quite interesting in that. Also, talking about education, earlier Joe Blake from Colorado State University made a presentation on the value of post-secondary education, and of course was clinging on some of the strings around the state budget and higher ed as well. The economic forecast breakfast was attended by the mayor, Christian Gibbons, and myself last Thursday. It was a little bit different format this time around. It was 5 what they referred to as captains of industry, and a lot of folks were maybe a little upset because 3 out of the 5 of them had a rather cynical view as to Colorado's economy over this next couple of years. So it was an interesting presentation, entertaining as well. And then the Legislative Action Committee at the meeting last Tuesday had a guest of Chris Holbert, who's a representative from the Lone Tree Parker area, and talked about the big issues that are going to be before the state legislature this year are budget, jobs, budget, economy, budget, education, and budget. So we can just imagine what the headlines of the newspaper are going to have over the next, 120-day session. So we've got about 113 yet to go. One of the things that is available for folks, and I know at our study session last week we were talking about solar gardens, individuals and property owners can actually go out to the DRCOG website, and on the front page it'll have an ability for folks to click on the Denver Regional Solar Map. And what that allows you to do is actually you could enter an address, could be your home, actually, and what it would do is if you would utilize solar panels, how much energy you might generate from your rooftop, and then an estimate of how much money you might actually be able to save. And then if you want to click on, you can actually be contacted by some folks that would actually provide some help in making sure that you were in a position to not only be able to contract for installation, but also all of the assistance that could be provided through both the state as well as federal tax benefits that you might want to have. And then my next town hall meeting for District 3 is going to be on March 5th on a Saturday. I went a little bit later in the day from 2 to 4 p.m., and this is the season for utilizing the South Metro Denver Realtor Association on that date. And then for folks that aren't otherwise engaged, Thursday evening this week, Tom Christopite and the Littleton Pub are continuing their discussion of city planning, urban planning, and the like. And particular focus in this week's theme is zoning for community welfare, as well as addressing or covering or discussing some of the lawsuits that have actually existed or have gone about in the city of Littleton relative to zoning.
Peggy.
Three things. First, if anybody's still watching, I hope people will consider volunteering at the library, the museum, public schools, or other places that need volunteers. Second, I want to thank the city staff who worked with ACC to plan the Martin Luther King breakfast. The mayor was featured speaker and I thought gave an excellent speech. And third, I assume you all read your email. You saw the notice that Governor Hickenlooper signed an executive order saying that state departments could not give mandates to municipalities that are unfunded. And so I sent city manager an email asking whether there's any chance that executive order might apply to the ammonia mandate or other upcoming mandates at the wastewater treatment plant. And he's asked Charlie to refer that to the legal counsel at the plant. I thought maybe there's some hope in that regard, but slim, but
now, since the genesis of that is federal law, I don't know, but since the governor came out with that, I think it's a good question. And David Robbins is the special counsel and knows all of that. So
well, as I understood from our breakfast there in December, that although that it's federal, the state interprets certain pieces, and that's why I thought there might be a little chance.
It doesn't hurt to ask.
Anyway, thank you.
Just a quick calendar item, Council, to make sure. Marlene sent out an email today. I don't know if all of you got it, but the breakfast with the Arapahoe County Commissioners Thursday is canceled.
Isn't this 3 years in a row that's been canceled? I think we need to take a look at whether we're going to continue to put that on the schedule.
I'll have to check. I don't remember, Jim, whether we got with them last year or not.
We met with them.
I think we met with them.
We met with them over at the administration building.
Last year in 2010?
I think so.
Okay, I'm just drawing a blank.
I know that we've met with them at least once, I think maybe twice since I was first elected.
All right. I'll ask Marlene to double check.
Dr. Cog, report.
Yes, the Metro Vision Issues Committee and the Regional Transportation Committee both had very similar agendas. We got the 2010 update to the 2035 Metro Vision Regional Transportation Plan, made recommendations to the Board of Directors for the approval of transportation projects that are delayed either 2 or 3 years beyond the first being funded, requires board action to continue. The Metro Vision Issues Committee acted on the list of projects being funded in the 2012-2017 Transportation Improvement Plan, and that was not without a great deal of controversy. The public hearing is going to be next month. We expect a great deal of fireworks. Final approval will be happening in March.
All right, council. Somebody want to make a motion for an executive session for the Sternberg building? Debbie.
So
I move to conduct an executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402(4) to discuss the purchase, acquisition, lease, transfer, sale of any real, personal, or other property interest, specifically regarding potential sale of Sternberg building.
Second.
Yeah, it's been moved and seconded to convene an executive session to discuss potential sale of the Sternberg building. Discussion. It takes 5 votes.
The vote is 6 in favor, with Councilman Trujillo voting no. The motion is...
And I believe with us will be Jim and Charlie and Phil.
And Suzanne.
And Suzanne.
And where are we going?
Let's, the small conference room, and let's meet at 10 till.